Good evening, everybody. Welcome you here tonight. Before we get started, I'd like to welcome Father Matthew Van Smorenberg from St. Brendan, the Navigator Catholic Church in Cumming, Georgia, to lead us in an invocation.
Thank you, Mayor, for having me here. I'd like to invoke tonight our Creator, who endows us with life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I ask Him tonight to endow us with unity, with dialogue, with the capacity to understand points of view, and in a spirit of civility. In You we trust. Grant us trust in each other and an open mind, a gentle heart, a wisdom to perceive the good, the character of our city, and to grow and develop wisely for the good of each other and of our future citizens. Bring us together as a city, as a county, as a state. Bring us together as a nation. Sometimes in these days we face events of violence and division. Help us to find common ground here tonight. Help us to move forward in unity. Help us to speak and act in respect for differences. Grant us harmony. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. Okay, I'd like to call the regular meeting for the Milton City Council for Monday, December 7th, 2015 to order. And Sudi, if you'll call roll and make general announcements.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll be happy to call roll for the December 7th, 2015 regular meeting. I would like to remind those in attendance to please silence all cell phones at this time. Those attending the meeting who would like to provide public comment, either during the public hearing or during the call for public comment, you're required to complete a public comment card prior to speaking on the item. There is no public comment for consent agenda items or items under first presentation. Those called to speak will be taken in the order that the speaker cards are received by the city clerk prior to the beginning of tonight's meeting. All speakers will identify themselves by name, address, and organization if applicable. The City Council may allow public comment on either an agenda item or general public comment from a representative of such an organized group or association, provided that such an individual shall file a notarized affidavit that they have the authority to speak on behalf of said organization on a form provided by the city clerk prior to the agenda item being called. Demonstration of any sort within the chamber is prohibited, so please refrain from any applause, cheering, booing, outbursts, or dialogue with any person speaking. Please show the same respect to the person speaking that you will expect to receive yourself. Anyone in violation will be asked to leave. As I call roll this evening, please confirm your attendance. Mayor Joe Lockwood.
Here.
Councilmember Karen Thurman.
Here.
Councilmember Matt Kuntz.
Here.
Councilmember Bill Lusk.
Here.
Councilmember Bert Hewitt.
Here.
Councilmember Joe Longoria.
Here.
Councilmember Rick Morick.
Here.
Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Again, good evening. We're glad you're all here. We're a couple things tonight. I'm going to assume with the crowd here there's going to be some public comment. And that being said, we'll have a couple of opportunities. In the beginning, it'll be just general public comment on any item that has nothing to do with today's meeting. And then later, as we get into a specific item, then we'll have public comment on that item. And that being said, as most people know, we need to have you fill out a comment card and give to the city clerk before you speak publicly. So we'll give a few more minutes, but say in the next 5 or 10 minutes, give everybody a chance if you haven't already given a public comment card. But then we're going to cut those off because we need to know approximately how many folks we're going to have speaking and come up with an allotted time, basically. And what I mean by that, if there's 5 people wanting to speak, then we could give everybody plenty of time. But if there's 100 people wanting to speak, we need to to kind of divvy up the time a little in respect for everybody. So if anybody wants to have public comment, either general before any items or for the listed items tonight on the Conservation Subdivision Ordinance, please fill out a comment card, and I believe there are yellow cards on the desk out there, and bring up to Sudi. Thank you. So Sudi, if you will, please sound the item for the agenda.
Next item is approval of the meeting agenda. This is agenda item number 15, 300.
Okay. What I'd like to do is we've got some CPAC appointments. I'd like to move unfinished business agenda item number 15-308, consideration of a resolution appointing members to the City of Milton Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee by appointing members from District 1, Post 1, District 1, Post 2, District 2, Post 1, District 3, Post 1, and District 3, Post 2 after reports and presentations. And I'd also like to add an executive session to discuss personnel. Is there anything that council would want to add to the agenda? How about staff? Okay. Joe?
Mayor, if you could take off the nomination for District 3 Post 1. I've not heard back from the individual that I was expecting to, so.
Okay. We can clarify.
So it was actually titled, the resolution is titled that way, so it'll stay there, you just won't have.
Okay,
the name
all right.
name of your spot.
Okay.
That's fine.
Okay. I have a motion on the agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilmember Hewitt, second from Councilmember Morig. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Okay. Next item is public comment. Public comment is a time for citizens to share information with the mayor and city council and to provide input and opinions on any matter that is not scheduled for its own public hearing during today's meeting. There's no discussion on items on the consent agenda or first presentation from the public or from council. Each citizen who chooses to participate in public comment must complete a comment card and submit it to the city clerk. Please remember this is not a time to engage the mayor or members of the city council in conversation. When your name is called, please come forward and speak into the microphone stating your name and address for the record, and you'll have 5 minutes for remarks. And this is just general public comment that if it's not pertaining to any of our items later during this meeting. So, Sudi, do we have any just general public comment?
We do have one
Okay.
comment, sir. And that is from Miss Margaret Lutens. Miss Margaret Lutens.
Hello, my name is Margaret Lutens, and I live at 3515 Peacock Road, right around the corner from here. And I am here concerning a lack of response by the city. I was at home watching Channel 2 Action News, and there was a story about the Secretary of State and the data breach that they had, and how some of the fellow Republicans in this state were not satisfied with the response of the Secretary of State in regards to their data breach. Well, I'd like to say that I was not satisfied with my city's response to a similar data breach, but I can't say that there's been any response at all. As you know, I enjoy reading papers, and especially local newspapers, and I want to make it perfectly clear the content of the emails is irrelevant to me. What I'm talking about is the release of this information. This is what concerns me. And the reason it concerns me is that there should have been a limited number of people that had access to this set of emails. As I understand it, it would have been the city attorney, the city manager, and you as council. I'm somewhat concerned as to how this was released. Do we have a hacker? Do we have somebody who's fishing for information? Is it a citizen, an outsider? Given all the other lack of responses that I've had in my terrible difficulty getting information when I've needed it, which has included the budget. When I was here during the budget meeting, our city manager had said that the budget would be available at the City Hall, your regular finance counter. I went there to go look at it, and there wasn't a copy there. So I'm just extremely concerned what is going on here. It rather reminds me of the Pentagon Papers, only this is the reverse. We have a government releasing, perhaps, consultant secrets instead of consultants releasing government secrets. I don't know what's going on, but I would like the city to do an investigation on this. I think this is serious enough that the city should hire somebody who is an outside professional to deal with this, because it concerns me greatly that so much of the information here at the city is so well guarded. Whenever I try to get any information about zoning, about the trash ordinances, whenever I want to meet with the police chief, I have roadblocks thrown in my way left and right, and somehow this very sensitive information came out. So that's all I have to say to you this evening. I'm going to go home and finish watching the news. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, do you have any more general public
That's
comment?
all, sir.
Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Sudi, if you'll please call that item.
First item is approval of the financial statements for the period ending October 2015. Agenda item number 15301. Next, approval of a contract agreement between the City of Milton and Overhead Door Company of Atlanta, a division of D.H. Pace Company, for the installation of a security grill at Northwestern Middle School. Agenda item number 15302, our third consent agenda item, is approval of a resolution and contract for acquisition of right-of-way by and between the Georgia Department of Transportation and the City of Milton for project PI 0011675, Crabapple Streetscape. Agenda item number 15303. Our final consent agenda item this evening is approval of an amendment to the OpenGov Inc. contract to add the full suite of web-based financial transparency services. Agenda item number 15304.
Mayor, I'll move to approve the consent agenda as prepared by staff.
Second.
Okay, I've got a motion by Councilmember Luss, second by Councilmember Coots. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. City will move on to reports and presentations. You'll call those items.
This item is recognition and presentation of Milton 5-year anniversary service award pins. These are being presented by Mayor Joe Lockwood.
Okay, this is a special item that we get to do this evening. We're recognizing staff members and also council member who has been with us for 5 years. So I'm going to step forward to the podium, and then if Chris could call out your name, and we'll present you with a 5-year pin. And if council would like to join me, that'd be great.
Perfect. So I see Sergeant Ward is here. Dave,
Do you want to step over now?
if you join the mayor up front, Councilmember Longoria. Councilor Baroni? He couldn't make it. Okay. Got it.
Thank you for being here for 5 years. It's an honor to help you get many more of those. David, appreciate everything you've done. Keeps us all in line. Joe, appreciate all your help and hard work. So, thank you. You guys want to get a picture? Or, I don't know if we can. Sweet here? Yeah.
No, we can sit in front. We're gonna make you work right now. You know, yeah. Yeah. Big and high.
Okay, Sudi, we could move, I think we moved to new business, or before new business, the CPAC. So if you wanted to read our first presentation.
Our next item is consideration of a resolution appointing members to the City of Milton Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee by appointing members from District 1 Post 1, District 1 Post 2, District 2 Post 1, District 3 Post 1, and District 3 Post 2. Agenda item number 15308, Mayor Joe Lockwood.
Okay. Tonight it looks like we've got Bert Hewitt. You've got a
Yes.
appointee?
I'd like to put forward the name Terrence McCrossan for my appointment. Terrence is the Senior Vice President and General Manager at Fleet Corps in Norcross with a background in marketing and strategic planning. He and his wife, Jo Lynn, are 15-year residents of the Milton and Crabapple area. They've got 2 kids, a boy and a girl, that are in Summit Hill and Northwestern Middle School. And he's been involved in the youth sports programs around the area, and his wife has been involved at the school and the PTO and the Governance Council. So I'd like to put forth Terrence McCrossan.
Okay. And Rick, you have an appointee?
Sure. My appointee, I'd like to nominate Sumit Shah, who's a resident in Milton and lives in Lake Laurel subdivision. He currently has been serving the last 2 years on the Milton Board of Zoning Appeals. He's married and is a parent of 2 children. I think that Sumit would make a great contribution and continued, and he's got a commitment to where we want to take Milton going forward.
Okay. And at this point, procedurally, do we need to vote?
Mayor Lockwood, I have one also.
I'm sorry, Karen.
That's
Go ahead.
okay. I'd like to appoint Richie Johnson. I believe Richie is a appointee on another board for Councilmember Hewitt, but he comes highly recommended to us and is excited to be a part of the planning process.
Okay. All right. So procedurally, would we need to vote on these?
That would be my preference,
Which
yes,
is-
to vote on them individually.
Okay. Bill?
I'm happy to propose Mr. Bill O'Connor as my appointee. I think everyone here has known Bill for the last few years, formerly as the Economic Development Director for the city. He's retired from the state of New York, where he was the state architect for several years. I think Bill comes highly qualified, and I think he will be a great addition to CPAC. I'd like to nominate Mr. Bill O'Connor.
Okay. Before I say anything else, is there anybody else that still needs to nominate someone? Or Joe, I know you're waiting.
I did mine last week.
Okay. All right. Well, then I'll put forward these members for the CPAC nominations and open up for a motion for support.
If we could, let's just start in order if we can. So with
Do we need to do individually?
Councilmember Thurman's
Okay.
Suggestion of Richie Johnson. Would there be a motion?
Okay. Do I have a motion for Richie Johnson for
So moved.
represent
Second.
Councilmember Thurman? I have a motion by Councilmember Longoria, second by Councilmember Morrig. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes unanimous. Then I'll just move down the line, and for Bill O'Connor, for Bill Lusk's appointee, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilmember Kuntz, second by Councilmember Hewitt. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so I'll move down to Councilmember Hewitt and Terrence McCrossan. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilmember Longoria, second from Councilmember Thurman. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, then I'll move down to Councilmember Morg's appointee, Sumit Shah. Do I have a motion? So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Hewitt, second from Councilmember Thurman. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right. And those that are here tonight, we can go ahead and swear in, so I'll step down and swear them in. And again, if we can call if there's anybody else that has not filled out a public comment card, if you would do so now, and then we're going to shut the comment cards off. Also, members of the Planning Commission, if you need to be sworn in. to do this all at once? All right, this is for the Comprehensive Planning Advisory Committee. If you'll raise your right hand and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear and affirm that I will faithfully perform the duties of the Comprehensive Planning Advisory Committee member of the city, and that I will support and defend the charter thereof, as well as the Constitution and laws of the state of Georgia and of the United States of America. Thank you very much. And if you guys will sign here. Let's see. Raise your hand now. It's a special pen. Thanks, guys. I appreciate your service.
Lot design standards, you must have, oh, it's this one.
Okay. If, and again, I always don't want to miss an opportunity to thank our volunteers and our committees. They do a lot of hard work for our city, and it definitely makes our city better because we've got a lot of folks that care. So we appreciate that.
I agree.
All right. Sudi, if you want to go to our first presentation and read the items.
First item is consideration of RZ 15-25, 13201 Deerfield Parkway by Inwood Holdings, LLC, to rezone from T5 Limited to A, medium density apartments for the existing 356-unit apartment development North Park Apartments. Agenda item number 15305. Next, consideration of RZ 15-26 to create a new use permit for alternative housing for seniors in AG1 and single-family residential districts. Agenda item number 15306. Our third and final first presentation item is consideration of RZ 1527 to amend the signs, Article 16 of the zoning ordinance, Chapter 64. Agenda item number 15307.
Okay. Do I have a motion and a second on the first presentation items?
I'll make a motion to approve the first presentation as read by staff.
Second motion.
Okay, I have a motion from Councilmember Kuntz, second by Councilmember Lusk. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, it passes unanimous. Okay, Sudi, if you'll, we'll move on to our next item. And before you call it, I'd just like to, Ken, ask your, before we discuss this item, I've had a citizen mention that there might be a conflict of interest on my part where I might want to recuse from the conservation subdivision ordinance since I do own and live on a piece of property, a larger piece of property. I just want to, I know you've gone over it, but I just want to, for the record, clarify that whether I need to. It'd be very nice to be able to recuse myself and not have to go through the discussion, but I don't think that would be fair.
Mr. Mayor, yeah, you have consulted with me on that, and obviously you're not concerned with me advising what I've consulted, or you wouldn't be asking it now, but my position is because this is a regulation of citywide impact that you do not need to recuse.
Okay, thank you. Sudi, if you'll please call the item.
Our next item is consideration of an ordinance to create a conservation subdivision, Chapter 50, Article 5 of the City Code of Milton. Agenda item number 15183. First presentation at the July 6th regular council meeting, discussed at the July 13th city council work session, discussed at the August 20th special called work session and city council meeting, and deferred to September 21st meeting, postponed at the September 14th special called meeting, published on September 21st regular city council meeting, but not discussed. Ms. Kathy Field.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. Just to clarify, we are working off of a draft dated 8/25/15. This draft before you includes comments that were made at the August 20th, 2015 special called work session, as well as comments generated from our legal review. Having said that, Mr. Mayor, I am prepared to provide a brief overview of the ordinance in front of you. However, in light of the fact that we've had 2 council work sessions on this, I'm, at your determination, prepared to waive that overview and be prepared instead to answer questions.
Okay. And again, we've got some public comment coming up, and if there's any specific questions right now or afterwards, we'll certainly have you available, Kathy. I would like to say before we get started, and Sudi, at some point in the near future, you can let us know how many public comments cards we have.
50.
Okay. Just a couple things I'd like to say. The good news is there's a lot of passion and support, and both we've got some folks here in support of this ordinance and some opposition. I truly believe that everybody is actually looking out for the same interest. Both sides, no matter which position you have, your interest is in the benefit for the city, limiting development, preserving the look that most people move here for and that we like. So, sometimes people have different avenues of going there, but the good news is I think the ultimate goal for everybody is the same. So, that being said, I just ask everybody to respect both sides of the situation, or both opinions, and as people speak, just again be respectful. And I learned a long time ago, I may have my mind made up and my opinion on something, and it may differ than, say, Bill or Matt's, and I may know I'm right and have all the facts, but I have to respect the fact that in their mind they know they're right and have all the facts. So either one of us is right or wrong, or the answer's somewhere in the middle. So again, respectfully, I think everybody has a good, they feel they have a good intent with their position. So this is an opportunity to hear everybody's side and take those. We want to hear your comments and take those into consideration as we decide moving forward. That being said, we do have 50 comments, and I've had several people ask, well, how much time are you going to give us? Normally you'll allow people 5 minutes. Well, I said, if we've got 4 or 5 folks, that's 5 minutes. But if we have 50 and we do 5 minutes, that's about 4 hours. So I don't know, in respect for everybody that's here, as well as the staff and the council, I think if we spent 4 hours on public comment. So I'm going to open up for a suggestion. I'm not sure if we should, maybe go down to a minute or minute and a half. What are you guys' thoughts? 2 minutes. And that being said, I want to come up with a time, but everybody doesn't have to use their full amount of time. If you're repeating what somebody else says, you could just say that and keep it short, just out of respect for the entire crowd. Does anybody have any idea?
We do 2 minutes each. That's 100 minutes, and hopefully not everyone will use the full 2 minutes, and that gets us done in about an hour and a half.
And not everybody wants to speak. Some just want their
the
name in the record.
The recommendation of the city attorney is that we allow 2 minutes, and then we do a hard stop in an hour and reassess where we are.
Okay. All right. Is the council okay with 2 minutes?
Sure. Yep.
Sure.
And then, and again, to the, this is not intended to limit somebody's time speaking. It's just it's more to let everybody have a chance to speak. So if you don't need your entire 2 minutes, please don't feel free not to use them. But we do want to hear from everybody. So right now, I'll open up for public comment. Again, we called for the cards a few minutes ago, and we made that announcement early on. So we have all the cards that will be speaking, and Sudi, if you'll call the first person. And this is not in any order. It's not all in opposition and all in support. It's just as the cards were turned in. So.
The first card that came in does not wish to speak, from Charles Fisher, who is in support, 388 Taylor Glen Drive, Milton, Georgia. Next card. The next card is from Ann Mosier, who does not wish to speak but is in opposition and resides at 15130 North Valley Field, Milton. The next speaker would like to speak, and that's Jack Linden.
Mr. Mayor, before Mr. Linden speaks, if I could just make an announcement to the council as well as to the gallery that rather than trying to interrupt speakers today when that 2 minutes has elapsed, you're simply going to hear one ding of a bell, and that will mean that the 2 minutes has elapsed and we'll need to move on to the next speaker.
Okay, and I just ask everybody's respect in that if they would, once they hear the bell, if they'd wrap it up in a couple of seconds. So.
Hello, I'm Jack Linden at 14810 East Bluff Road in Milton. Good evening, Council, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you on this important issue. I am, as you know, a strong supporter of the conservation subdivision idea. This is one of the few ways we have to conserve our horse fields, green spaces, and view sheds without spending millions of dollars in taxpayer money to buy up land we all love. First, a few suggestions for amendments to the CSO draft. One, I suggest that you simply change the wording in section 50-139 from the CSO being the preferred mode of development to a permitted mode of development, putting to rest any notions that this ordinance is mandatory. You may also want to look at Part C of that same section, which is confusing, I think, on this issue. Second, I would like to see that the minimum allowed lot size be increased somewhat from the current 1 quarter acre minimum. And third, I'd like to see an increase in the undisturbed buffers around the perimeters of the subdivisions, particularly along the roadway for the view shed. A few comments about this process. I've been very disheartened by the bitter nature of the debate on this issue, and I certainly didn't expect that our honest attempts to provide input into ways our community could be developed would turn into such a divisive debate. Having said that, the process has provided me with a chance to talk to many people with differing points of view and to modify my thoughts and positions on this important issue. I know personally I have learned a great deal from this process, and I'm grateful for all the useful discussions I've had. Finally, I want to thank all the City Council members and those on City staff who have worked so hard on this issue for their willingness to listen to the suggestions that I and other members of MGG have provided. I know that many people have had that same opportunity, and I know you've waded through many of these different points of view. And I think you should be commended for your patience and understanding. As arduous as this process has been, I believe that this has really been a true example of the democratic process in action. Thank you.
Thank you. Sudi, if you call the next, please.
Next speaker is Bernard Wolf.
Good evening. I'm Bernard Wolf on 1000 Lackey Road. I've helped put together the Lackawanna project. In view of time, I'm going to read my comments because I tend to linger if I don't. I believe a CSO should address the concerns and desires of landowners, developers, home builders, citizens, and municipality. A properly considered CSO will accomplish this. Creativity should rule in conservation development. It should be oriented toward custom builders and developers rather than those that follow the the fixed, clear, and build model of development. A project should be considered from the perspective of the entire property rather than individual lots or sections within that community. Guidelines and regulations, I think, should be confined to basics. Leave the creative details to the developer and builder within the design constraints vis-a-vis Milton's theme. Where feasible, the community should have a tried and proven, easy to maintain, environmentally benign community wastewater system and allow smaller lots, including in the diversity. Why to do this? It isn't to increase diversity. It's to increase and preserve the natural areas. The bigger the lot, and particularly if you have septic in it, the less natural areas you're going to have. Let's have diversity in home sizes and styles and amenities to promote the neighborhood and rural theme. A properly done conservation subdivision is cheaper to develop. The homes therein sell twice as fast, and they command a 25 to 30% premium for initial sale and resale. Again, it will address the concerns of everyone. The landowners involved in Lacapani have employed a nationally renowned architectural firm to work up conservation development, and they've used the experience to do this. I welcome everyone in the city to please come visit Lacapani to see how conservation development can work.
Right.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Sudie, if you'll call the next person, please.
Next person is Charlie Bostwick. Rose Prestiani.
I'm Charlie Bostwick. I'm with Brightwater Homes. We're a home builder. We're also environmentalists, and we love what we do in the city of Milton and would like to take it the next step in creating a better, sustainable project. And we are in support of this project, of this ordinance, because it gives us the opportunity to do what's right. And this is what allows us to do. If we develop this as it is with AG1, we cannot do these things. If your ordinance is passed tonight, we can. We can, and what you have in front of you is an example of what we've drawn out that meets the ordinance as it's currently written. We can preserve the rural feel of the existing road with open space, including pasture, garden, and orchard, by grouping the homes in hamlets in the woods rather than along the existing road. We can maintain wide lots with large homes. Even though we're doing this, we can still have large 3-car side entry garages. We're going to have $800,000 homes either way we build these. We can create bigger buffers from neighboring properties. We can create over 2 miles of walking trails on these 64 acres. This is a lifestyle amenity that is shown to be even more popular than golf courses and tennis courts and recent polls. Empty nesters and young families alike will appreciate this and live a healthier life. We can preserve well over 50% of the land. We can leave huge undisturbed natural corridors. We can use environmentally friendly development methods. We can build homes further from sensitive streams. We can create a place for families to thrive, where they can enjoy the outdoors, the streams, the trails, the gardens. We can create a pasture with horses out front. That's what belongs in Milton. We can't do that with AG1. We can give access to the use of the lake for the entire neighborhood, not just the 4 big homes, big lots that are bordering it, for the entire community. And then last but not least, we can all be proud of what we've done for our citizens, our children, our environment, and our aesthetics. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Rose Prestiani, and after that will be Tom Kuhn.
I want to thank the mayor and the city council for this opportunity to speak before you today on this very important issue to all the citizens of Milton. I'm very concerned about
Ms.
the plan.
Prestiani, can I ask you to state your name?
Rose
just for the
Prestiani,
record?
105 Providence Oaks Point, Milton.
And
Thank
you have a couple seconds more.
Thank
so
you.
speak.
I don't think the plan before you is appropriate for the city of Milton. It really, when we fought so hard to create the city that we love, we really said that we didn't want to be a sewer appropriated kind of city. The perception for many of us is this introduces sewer systems. They may be smaller, but sewer systems to all parts of Milton. It really seems to violate some of the founding principles upon which we built the city. It seems to have the potential for perhaps a long-term negative effect, maybe environmental and even legal and financial responsibilities. Your own planning council did unanimously reject this concept as it is currently written. I think it allows a small number of folks to benefit. It sort of seems to fit the 80-20 rule, that 20% of people will benefit greatly, significantly, and I can understand the desire to do this, but I think the majority will not benefit from putting in a plan of this nature. Even the plan itself as is written seems very vague in areas, allowing for green space, hard surfaces, buildings, also allowing wastewater treatment to be part of green space. So it feels that it isn't really, or it reads as though it's not really written appropriately and in a safe and environmentally friendly manner. So I do oppose it, and I want to thank you very much for giving me the time to speak with you this evening on it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Tom Kuhn, and after that will be Carol Lane.
Hi, my name is Tom Keene. I live at 105 Providence Oaks Point in Milton. I'm in opposition of the CSO as is currently written. And as we know, this has been batted around for a few months now on both sides. And I guess even earlier I've received correspondence from my own council member who says they might be agreeable to CSO, but this particular plan is not workable. So I'm here only to really say one thing and ask you to go ahead and vote on it, reject it tonight as it's currently written, and then make it the way that will work for everybody. Okay? That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Next speaker is Carol Lane, and after that will be Don Willis.
Hello, my name is Carol Lane. My husband Dale and I live at 14890 East Bluff Road, Milton, Georgia. Dale and I were born in Atlanta. We moved to Milton in 1992. We see Milton as a diamond in the rough. Diamond in quotations and rough in quotations. The rough is the surrounding areas outside of Milton where the density is such that homes are built on 1/4 acre lots. This is due to sewer. Milton is the diamond because of AG1. There is more undeveloped land here due to septic, which requires soil and percolation tests. Because of the required tests, not all 1 acre lots are buildable. The CSO would not require these tests, thus increasing density. There is the introduction to private community sewer, which increases density. AG1/septic has served our community well. Please deny CSO. Thank you, Carol Lane.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Don Willis, and after that is Art Adams.
I'm Don Willis. My wife, Marilyn, and I have been on 13475 Birmingham Highway for 46 years. We have 7.72 acres that we want to subdivide and give to our 5 grown grandchildren to build a home if they so desire. I don't see why I have to give the government or anyone else part of my land for any reason. The existing Ag 1 allows for plenty of green space on each acre after a home is built. I haven't seen too many homes that cover a full acre. Also, the beauty of riding up Birmingham Highway is to see the homes, especially at Christmas time, not to have them blocked by unnecessary buffers and setbacks. Please vote no on the CSO and any changes to Ag 1. And I'd like to enter this letter into the record. Thank you for your service.
Okay, thank you. Sudie, if you'll call our next.
Next speaker is Art Adams, and after that is Arnold Moore.
Howdy. My name is Art Adams. I live at 3047 Oakside Circle. My background is that for 35 years I was a consulting environmental engineer. I did large water projects. Fairfax County Water Authority outside of D.C. was my client from 1966 until he retired in 2001. Also the Tampa wastewater plant, which produced drinking water in their sewage plant, and the city of St. Petersburg, which has probably the best reuse system in the country. I'm in favor of this ordinance. I'd like to dispute the fact that it talks about higher density. The way I read the ordinance in section 5140, section D, basically the developer lays out his property as if there were no ordinance, and if the property only will hold 10 buildable lots, then no matter how big his property is, he can still only do 10 buildable lots. So it does not increase the density, and it does not increase the number of homes that can be built on a piece of property. The other thing that I've been really in favor of is some kind of a community system, sewer system. Septic tanks are absolutely the worst thing you can do for the environment. They basically produce about 60% of the pollutants get removed from the septic tank, and the other 40% goes into the drinking water or into the aquifer. So a community system will do a couple of things. Number one, it'll give you better treatment. Number two, it will provide an opportunity for reuse, which I think in this area where we're trying to conserve water supply is a good thing, because when you build the little sewer lines, you can also build a reuse line, and whatever comes out of your wastewater plant, you can use for reuse. So thanks for your consideration.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Arnold Moore, and after that is Barbara Slate.
Good evening, Council. My name is Arnold Moore, 395 Canterbury Lake in Milton. I'm concerned about the CSO as it is written, because I do believe that it increases density. I believe we're going to have a number of subdivisions with quarter-acre lots, perhaps third-acre lots if you change the designation, which are going to be offset by land that's essentially unbuildable today. So I don't think we're conserving anything, because I think what is not going to be built is either going to be covered with septic systems or it's going to be unbuildable and would have been conserved even without this ordinance. I am a registered professional engineer in the state of Georgia. I don't believe that I've seen any plans for community septic systems about how they're going to work, whether or not they're going to perk correctly. I've heard people indicate that we may have to reduce the perk requirements, which I think is absolutely insane. I am concerned about the risks that Milton will undertake in terms of health of their citizens, in terms of financial responsibility, and in terms of legal problems with these sewage systems. Thank you.
Thank you. Sudie, you'll call the next speakers.
Our next speaker is Barbara Slate, and after that is Joe Lempole.
Good evening. I'm Barbara Slate. I'm at 13545 Providence Road. And I'm not going to repeat everything everyone else that you've heard from everyone else. I'm firmly against the CSO, and we hope that you'll vote no. Thank you.
Our next speaker comes from Joe Lempole, and after that is Lisa Cawley.
Mayor Lockwood and members of the council, thank you. My name is Joe Lempole. I live at 2330 Saddle Springs Drive. I am in support of approval of the CSO. I recognize the rights of property owners and developers, yet it's imperative that we act now to protect the balance between those rights and those of Milton's citizens. Milton's Comprehensive Land Use Plan of 2011 was developed after broad concern by its citizens over protecting Milton's rural character. Nearly 3,000 responded to surveys that were mailed to every household. Per that response, number one on the list of goals for Milton's future was open space preservation. New development should be designed to minimize the amount of land consumed from development. And number two, environmental protection from the negative impact of development. This CSO is a plan that was created for these very reasons. We've seen it evolve and mature with plenty of input from all sides. It incorporates the best ideas from that and other successful CSOs around the country, plus a proven formula that not only works, but is forward-thinking, exactly what Milton desperately needs right now. Any remaining issues the plan needs resolving are fixable, and the technology and human resources for that exist. But what we can't fix is the continued loss of open space, view sheds, and environmental degradation for the sake of squeezing as many homes on as many lots as possible. People buy differences, not similarities, and we know why Milton is different. And that's what we love about it. But if we fail to be proactive, we won't be different for very long. We've heard it before. The definition of lunacy is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. Only in this case, it's worse. It's now or never. There are no do-overs once it's gone. No reboots and no Control-Alt-Deletes. If we don't put proactive measures in a solid plan in place right now, tonight, it will be too late to address this again next time. There won't be any rural Milton left to preserve. We need this plan as a way to give property owners, developers, and buyers an option that works for them and the citizens of Milton who care about preserving our greatest asset. Thank you.
Thank you. Judy, if you'll call the next two speakers.
The next speaker is Lisa Cawley, and after that is Laura Rensher.
My name is Lisa Cawley. I live at 14680 Freemanville Road. The goal of this community was to slow development. The CSO will not slow development. The CSO forces developers to place half the land they purchase into conservation. To get the same yield, the CSO allows higher density, up to 4 homes an acre. Typical conservation subdivisions are on sewer. Since we don't have sewer in Milton, the CSO wants to use community septic systems. Packaged septic systems are not fail-proof and have a reputation of failure. Septic systems place nitrates in the soil and potable water. Fulton County requires one septic system per acre for this reason. Packaged septic systems allow the developer to circumvent perk testing and enables environmentally sensitive land to be developed that a developer wouldn't consider otherwise. Community septic systems leave Milton vulnerable to sewer expansion as a solution to septic maintenance issues and failures. Density bonuses for a conservation subdivision are incentives to developers and builders. This is attractive to developers not wanting to go through a rezoning process or seeking variances. Conservation subdivisions are typically done with sewer and not septic. The CSO accelerates development since any developer will build a conservation subdivision in order to maximize their profit margins. This CSO is a trade-off of conserved green space for increased density behind a tree line and future soil and water contamination. With the proposed AG1 enhancements, the city intends to take up to 100 feet of setback from frontage. Instead of protecting my neighbors, the decrease in the setbacks on the property line are detrimental. The CSO paints a nice picture for people driving down our roads, but the people who live here and pay taxes are the ones affected negatively by the decreased setbacks. This mathematical wash is not a wash for surrounding neighbors. This will cause a chain reaction and make other large landowners want to sell their land and leave in Milton. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Laura Rensher, and after that is Alfred Saldivina.
Hi, my name is Laura Rensher. I live at 1060 Birmingham Road. I'm speaking on behalf of Preserve Rural Milton. I want to thank the mayor, the council, and the staff on their work on this ordinance. I know it's been extremely arduous, and I'm very disappointed, frankly, at how divisive it's been for the community, and I wish that weren't the case. I hope that we're going to be able to heal from this situation. With that, Preserve Rural Milton has been and continues to support conservation subdivisions as one of the many tools needed to preserve the rural character of the city, as well as to help address environmental problems associated with rampant development and urban sprawl. Many other communities across the country have used CSOs successfully to address the loss of open space, tree canopy, and wildlife habitats in their city. Our survey in the spring resulted in 500 responses and indicated that a strong majority also want the city to prioritize land conservation. We are not just a few loud people who want the city to make changes in development patterns. We had over 1,600 people sign our first petition in January of 2014, which addressed the need for changes in zoning and development regulations. At this point, we have almost 1,500 followers on Facebook. The city has 3,800. We receive financial donations regularly to support our efforts. For too long, the politicians and community have believed that retaining AG1 zoning with no public sewer has protected us from loss of rural character. Using AG1 zoning has protected Milton somewhat from higher density zoning, but it has not helped us retain the mission of the charter, which is to preserve the rural character and small town lifestyle. It has also not helped us maintain any sort of balance between development and retention of rural character, as stated in the comprehensive land use plan. The predictable outcome of retaining AG1 zoning with little additional development regulations to land use is 1 acre lots throughout the city. Subdivisions and infill development are eating up land at the rate of hundreds of acres a year.
Okay, Ms. Rencho, if you would mind wrapping it up. Thank you.
Next speaker is Alfred Saldavina, and after that...
And I would ask the audience to let the clerk and us monitor the time.
My name is Alfred Soldavini. I live at 15395 Thompson Way. I'm a 12-year resident of Milton. Very happy to be that. This ordinance is a disaster. The traffic that's been created in Milton in just the 12 years that I've lived here is choking the roads already, making life unbearable for many people. This ordinance will increase density, increase development, and cause more traffic, more disruption to our way of life, more pollution. It offers nothing of value to the present citizens of Milton. I have nothing good to say about it. As I say, I've been around a long time. I've lived in several states, West Virginia, New Jersey, Hudson County, Atlantic County. I've seen all kinds of developments. Now, you folks have a planning bureau, planning committee, and they've rejected this 3 times. Why are you even considering it? That's all I have to say.
Thank you. City, if you'll please call the next.
Our next speaker is James Touchton, and then Marty Locke.
Evening, Mayor and Council. James Touchton with the Council for Quality Growth, and I'll be very quick in my comments. Our point, we support this, just so you know. We support it with a few revisions. I think that you have my comments in front of you, but we think that revisions are needed in order to clarify whether the Conservation Subdivision Ordinance is mandatory to all residential developments over 20 acres or just those developed in the AG R1 and R2. The ordinance use of shall be the preferred method of subdivision is vague and indefinite. Vague legislation gives rise to procedural due process claims because individuals do not have fair notice as to whether they are within the scope of the legislation. We also recommend that Section 50-139C-D regarding use permits be removed from the ordinance before adopting to clarify that conservation subdivisions are encouraged but voluntary options for residential subdivision. Further, there is an inconsistency with the inclusion of all residential zoning districts in the ordinance, specifically R4, R4A, R5, and R5A currently allow a base density of less than 0.25 units per acre, which is in conflict with the Conservation Subdivision Lot Design Standards in Section 50-145.A. We ask you to clearly specify the lot yield for conservation subdivisions in a way that encourages developers to choose this option. Section 50-140D does not sufficiently specify the lot yield for the proposed subdivision. The Council recommends also considering additional incentives such as a Parks and Recreation Impact Fee credit for conservation subdivisions. As additional green space is provided on-site in conservation subdivision developments, the per-home impact on the city's park system will be greatly diminished. This incentive will encourage the preservation of open green space and development of community trails while providing an offset to the additional costs required to make this investment in green infrastructure and construct community wastewater systems. With that, Mayor, thank you.
Thank you. City, if you'll please call the next 2 items.
Next speaker is Marty Locke, and after that is Stacy O'Neill.
Mayor and Council, I'm Marty Locke. I live at 14140 Freemanville Road. I'd like to express my concern over the current conservation subdivision ordinance. I believe this is a bad idea for our city based on several issues. One, allowing homes on quarter-acre lots in the rural areas of our city will create a density none of us want. The septic systems supporting these developments have been known to fail in our neighboring communities and then become a burden on the city and its taxpayers. Nobody wants that either. Allowing non-potable and unbuildable property to be included in the formula for determining the number of homes that can be built on a piece of property is wrong on all fronts. If you can't put a home on it in the current environment, you shouldn't be able to consider it buildable in the CSO formula either. The Planning Commission members, of which all of you selected and approved, have studied and evaluated this ordinance in detail. They have voted unanimously 3 times to deny this ordinance. listen to their advice, and deny it as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Stacy O'Neill, and after that is James Roy Wells.
Good evening. I'm Stacy O'Neill, and I live at 5566 Benton Woods Drive. I've been 30 years in this community, so before much of what Milton looks like today, I've been riding a horse out in pasture at the corner of Bethany and Providence, having family picnics at Eads Lake in the area, and mulling around in Cooper Sandy Creek. I want to remind everybody that there's only 15% left of undeveloped land in the Milton area. So that's not very much land that we're talking about here. We're looking for options and creativity to preserve the look that Milton has, the rural look. You have a horse on your logo, and there's really not very much pasture left. And if you continue to build with the Ag 1 zoning regulations the way they are, you're going to have more subdivisions that look like white columns, no offense, the manor, big estate lots, less diversity. I don't think that's anything rural about that. And, looking at it from a stance of conservation and the environment, there's nothing worse for our environment than septic systems. So I would like to voice my vote in favor of the CSO and thank everybody for their time. I appreciate the difference of opinions we have, but I think a lot of people are still misinformed about a lot of facts about community septic and actually about what we're talking about here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is James Roy Wells, and after that is Kurt Nolte.
Good evening. I'm James Roy Wells, and I thank you, commissioners, for the job that you're doing. Thank you for letting me speak. I'm in favor of the conservation subdivision as it is written now. My daughter said it all. I can't add any more to what she said. I can't add any more to what the people for the conservation subdivision has already said. I'm not going to take up your time. You all know the ins and outs of what this is all about. So you know what the right thing to do, and that's to preserve Milton, to keep its rural look, protect the environment, and have diversity in your subdivision. Thank you.
Mr. Wells, would you mind just stating your address for the record?
I'm 330 Howes Way, Rossville, Georgia, and I own 80 acres at the corner of Bethany and Providence, and it is perfect for a conservation subdivision. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Kurt Nolte, and after that is Barbara Taylor.
Good evening. My name is Kurt Nolte. I live at 825 Dockbridge Way in Milton. We've been there about 17 years, and one of the reasons we picked Milton was because of the quality of life. And I do think the number one issue we have that threatens that quality of life is density. Everything I've been able to read, everything I've been able to see, everything I've been able to determine online is the ordinance as it's currently written will increase density here. I think it's pretty clear from all of the online petitions, just the people here today, that the vast majority of people are against this. The vast majority of residents in the city of Milton are against this. The Planning Commission has been set up for you as a resource to use for land use has, again, rejected this 3 times unanimously. So I guess if we're not voting for the residents, if we're not voting based upon the Planning Commission, I think those things should take precedence. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Barbara Taylor, and after that is Scott Sawyer.
My name is Barbara Taylor. I live at 1950 Drummond Pond Road. Why would you want to forever change the character in Milton? Usually the answer is for profit. The CSO is eventually a change in the zoning of Milton. It's adding a higher density of structures in our community without going through the proper channels. The City Planning Commission, as previous people mentioned, recommended denial of this. I don't understand why you're not listening to them. You cannot build structures on land that will not sustain the structures. Without the perk tests, this is a disaster waiting to happen. Often development such as this increases erosion, exacerbates flooding when it happens. The natural land balance has been eradicated under the guise of conservation. We do not want sewer lines. When you introduce sewer lines, you'll introduce ponds and swales. Where are those going to be? In my next-door neighbor's yard? Are they going to be visible from the next-door neighbor's property and thus lowering the property value, or from the road and ruining the rural landscape forever? And what about the impact of building 4 houses per acre on adjacent properties? Who's going to pay for the drainage that this causes when the runoff comes into my land? Someone just built a swimming pool 2 houses up from me, and it's cost me thousands of dollars in riprap just to maintain the water runoff, and I'm 2 houses down. That's a swimming pool. We're talking houses. The impact is huge. An environmental impact study should be done. When the sewers fail, who's going to pay? The HOA costs could be staggering. Right now, the way it is written in 22 pages, the HOA is responsible for this. It could be tens of thousands of dollars per homeowner. I mean, raise your hand in this room if you're against the CSO.
You know, ma'am, I'd like to.
All right, I'm sorry. I mean,
strike
all
that
of us
from
have
the
taken
record.
time to come here. I don't understand any point of it.
We're
And I also don't understand
everyone-
why,
we're
if
giving
we're not
everyone
financial, we should
equal
put a
time to
portion
talk.
of our land in something for perpetuity.
Next speaker is Scott Sawyer, and after that is Mark Holmes.
I'm Scott Sawyer. I live at 787 Quarterpath Lane. Thank you for your time tonight and your hard work on this ordinance. I'd like to voice my opposition to the CSO. I think it opens up unperkable, unbuildable land for additional development on top of the AG1 standards we already have. So it's actually going to increase development. It's not going to decrease it. So I wanted to voice my opposition and vote, ask you not to vote for the CSO or any amendments as well tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Judy, if you'll call the next speakers.
Next speaker is Mark Holmes, and after that is Sandra Ferez.
I'm Mark Holmes at 13900 Haygood Road. Just want to touch on one thing. I'm not sure that it's been hit yet. What's the long-term vision for conservation in Milton? We've talked about it. It increases density. It's going to crowd our schools and parks. It's going to increase traffic and pollution. Where are those new schools going to go for the additional kids? Now, I want to put it as land that developers are not interested in now will be, because they'll be able to add more homes than the law on the books allow today. How's that conservation? Laws can be changed at any time. Look at what you're doing here tonight. If you thought about 10, 20 years from now, the only land that's going to be left is the conserved land. Developers will see that. They'll make offers on it, on the conserved land. Different special interest groups will come to City Hall, like they're doing now, go after that land. This can happen. Laws can and will be changed, just like you're doing now. Thank you.
Thank you. Judy, if you'll please call the next.
Next speaker is Sandra Ferez, and after that is Diane McDonald.
Hello, my name is Sandra Ferris. I live at 2065 Country Ridge Road here in Milton. And again, I'd like to thank you for doing your service and everybody tonight to come to voice their opinions, that all of our opinions matter. Country Ridge subdivision opposes. I take full responsibility. How many times have we all heard that? I'll get back to that. It's our subdivision's thought that this CSO benefits a small group of landowners with some unbuildable land and for-profit home builders who will profit and then leave us. It's our thought that 38,000 or so Milton residents should have a vote in this, not just the 3,000 who may have answered a survey. A CSO of this or any magnitude should have a popular vote and not just the decision of a small committee. Will the committee take full responsibility when a community septic system fails? Financial responsibility? The vote should be no tonight and no forever on this CSO. The raising of hands a few moments ago against this CSO should tell you that the majority needs to speak. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Diane McDonald, and after that is Richard Veloff.
My name is Diane McDonald. My husband and I live at 15390 Thompson Way in Milton. We've been here for about 12 years, and we love it, and all the things that people have said about the qualities of the area. we totally agree with. We are definitely in opposition to the CSO, and I really hope that you adhere to the decision by the Planning Commission. I trust them a lot more than the people that are trying to push this CSO that have economic reasons for doing so. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Richard Villoff, and after that is Heather Creron.
Hi, I'm Richard Villoff. I live at 15750 Canterbury Chase in Milton. I oppose the CSO for the vast majority of the reasons that others have spoke, so I won't take much of your time. But I will note one thing as I've observed some of the commentary tonight. It appears that all the supporters of the CSO have an economic interest in it being passed, i.e. home builders, developers, perhaps landowners that are looking to maximize profits at the expense of existing Milton residents. So I think your job is to represent Milton residents and not future Milton residents, and look out for our economic interests of your residents and your constituents, and not for others and not for future people. You need to look out for your existing citizens, not the economic interests of developers and home builders. So I'm against the CSO for a vast majority of reasons, but I wanted to highlight what seems to be the conflict of interest between existing residents and home builders and developers that seem to be the vast majorities of the supporters. Thank you.
Thank you. Sudi, if you'll please call next.
Next speaker is Heather Caron, and after that is Tim Becker.
Thank you. Heather Creeran, 325 Taylor Glen Drive. Good evening. I believe there's actually one thing for sure we can all agree on, that the overwhelming majority of residents and city council members do not support the CSO as it is written, which is good news, so we have some common ground. Beyond that, the roads diverge very quickly and dramatically. I'm here to introduce the Milton Coalition Against the CSO. We are a passionate group of Milton citizens that range from longtime residents who own acreage to newbies like my husband and I, who have only lived here for 7 years in the Taylor Glen subdivision. We are in complete agreement that the conservation subdivisions are not good for Milton. Tonight, rather than coming up here and repeating the same things, each of us are going to talk about a specific topic, and we did email 9 topics to the City Council this morning and ask that they address them in their discussions tonight. The 9 topics are: do a majority of citizens in Milton want the CSO? Did the Planning Commission arrive at the wrong decision when they unanimously rejected the CSO 3 times? Were the consultants' recommendations sound and objective, and are you concerned that they had doubts about the feasibility of a CSO for Milton? Is this a gift to special interests? Do you believe the CSO will create a higher density than would occur under current zoning? And do you believe that introduction of private sewer systems violates a pledge made by the City Council members not to extend sewer into Milton? Are you confident that we have a well-written ordinance? What is your long-term vision for land use in Milton? How is this conservation if the CSO facilitates the development of properties that could not be developed today? And finally, does any of the content of the released emails concern the council members? I want to thank you all very much. I appreciate that my husband Tony and I were able to speak with all but one of you over the last 2 weeks. Thank you very much for taking the time to do that and for all of the time that you have clearly put into this subject and this process. I'm very much looking forward to your discussion tonight, and please vote no. Thank you.
Thank you, Sudi. If you call the next Lambs.
Next speaker is Tim Becker, and after that is David Damiani.
Good evening. Tim Becker, 15625 Canterbury Chase. The most important reason that the CSO should be denied is that the citizens do not want it. It is that simple. When we started the Milton Coalition 3 weeks ago, we had nothing. No organization, no money, no website, no followers, no email list. One of the first actions that we took was to create a simple flyer that we have now distributed to thousands of citizens. I personally walked 21 miles in 2 days, distributing 530 flyers to homes in 9 subdivisions. Along the way, I engaged at least 24 citizens And surprisingly, I found quite a few people knew about the CSO. And more surprisingly, I found that none liked it. After my walk, I continued to engage citizens and have yet to actually find, until tonight, a person that supports a CSO. Our coalition realized that we had found our top reason for denying the CSO. Citizens do not want it. So we have not created opposition to the CSO. We have channeled existing opposition. We have provided citizens multiple and simple means for expressing their opposition. This included creating a petition. We only went public with our petition 9 days ago, and as of just a few minutes ago, we had 810 concerned citizens that had signed it. That's in 9 days. We're an organization that didn't exist 3 weeks ago. So you need to pay attention to this. So I would like each council member tonight to confirm that they did as I did and engage citizens, and that their vote today is based on that engagement. If you truly did engage citizens, you know what I know.
Okay,
Citizens do not want a CSO.
Thank you. Sudi, please
Next.
call the next.
Next speaker is David Damiani, and after that is Tony Atita.
David Damiani, 935 Milton. I'm a business owner. I'm a chief financial officer. I'm a risk manager. What I'm not is a knowledge expert in conservation subdivisions, nor, as I presume, none of you are. So how do you handle a situation like that? You do like I do when you own a business. You engage third-party knowledge experts. You outsource. You delegate. You ask informed folks to make decisions on your behalf. You all did that, and I applaud you. You hired consultants. You hired a third-party, independent, nonpartisan consultant. You engaged a planning commission of volunteers. They came back with a recommendation 3 times, unanimously. You've heard all this tonight. I'm not going to go through this again. I stand against this for all the reasons all the folks who've outlined here tonight. My fellow suit stood up here a few minutes ago and said there's an economic interest on the developer's parts. I don't have an economic interest other than preserving the value of my home, which I suspect will go up either way. And let's not kid ourselves. We're all for conserving. I think we all have a different way of going about it. I got some folks over here who say I want a conservation subdivision because it's going to be better. I got some over here that say it's not going to be better. I don't know what the right answer is. I'm going to defer to the folks that I think know more than I do. And those folks are the consultants, the planning commission. They've said no to this. I encourage you to listen to them as well. If 3,000 people signed a petition, or 3,000 people responded to a survey and said, I want to conserve land in Milton, I was one of those idiots. Yeah, I did. That didn't mean I want a conservation subdivision. The question wasn't, do you want a conservation subdivision? Do you want to conserve land? Yes. I thought Preserve Rural Milton was the real deal until I started doing my own homework. Here's a guy who's considered probably the grandfather of conservation subdivision ordinances. He says, maybe you should just accept that the stars are not properly aligned in Milton. Conservation design is always most difficult in communities where 1 lot or acres are allowed.
Excuse me, sir, if you could wrap it up. Thank you.
Next speaker is Tony Atita, and after that is Laura Bentley.
So I'm going to fix this microphone first of all. There we go. I'm part of the Milton Coalition Against the CSO, and the question that I'd like you to answer for us tonight.
Excuse me one second. Just name and address for the record.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Tony Otita, 325 Taylor Glen Drive, Milton, Georgia. My concern is that this is a gift to special interest, to big landowners and to developers. And before we leave tonight, I'd like you to sort of put me at ease about that, because if somebody can, after this is rezoned, if they can make more money once it's rezoned than they can today, then I think that there's something that needs to be explained about that to the citizens of Milton. Thank you.
Thank you. Sudi, who's next after
Next is Laura Bentley, and after that is Cleveland Slater.
Laura Bentley, 2500 Bethany Church Road. We oppose the CSO because it will result in higher density housing and introduces private sewer via community septic. Case in point, Thompson Road. 70-acre parcel under the CSO yields a density of 1 home per acre plus a 10% bonus. 77 homes on 35 acres. Contrast this yield under AG1. The 70 acres under AG1 yielded 30 homes due to rigorous PERC testing. This is a real example brought forth and discussed by the Planning Commission and city staff last spring. 47 extra homes unnecessarily added to our already overcrowded roadways, parks, and schools. The CSO green space is private, not for the entire community, and there is no guarantee that there will ever be horses grazing there. The CSO is attractive to landowners with parcels that are not currently desirable for build-out. Floodplain and different topography now becomes green space with a density bonus to the developer so he can profit. This is an unnecessary incentive that will absolutely accelerate the development of land that is currently green space. Landowners with 10 to 20 acres could knit their parcels together and cash out on the CSO. Horse farms are the heart and soul of Milton. Scrapping the highly protective AG1 standards on which we based our investment is a total game changer. Community wastewater treatment systems are an experiment for which Milton citizens should not be liable. Systems fail, and when they do, HOAs historically are not prepared to deal with the required maintenance and replacement costs. CSO community septic will extend sewer into Milton's most treasured areas, which will open the door to commercial development there as well. Please deny this.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Cleveland Slater, and after that is Scott Sawyer.
My name is Cleveland Slater. I live at 13670 Bethany Road, Milton. I'm opposed to the CSO for a number of reasons. As you make your decision tonight, I ask you that you consider if you're confident that we have a well-defined, well-drafted ordinance. Do we have an ordinance that accomplishes its stated goal? Good people have worked more than a year to develop a CSO that is appropriate for our unique city. But tonight, you have before you an ordinance that I do not believe a majority of the council favors as it's currently written. I anticipate a number of amendments to the ordinance that will be introduced tonight in an effort to try to make enough changes to find support for some type of CSO ordinance. I'm very concerned that after more than a year of effort, it will be impossible to rewrite an ordinance tonight in a few hours that will not have significant unintended consequences for the city of Milton. Some people claim the conservation ordinance is optional, but the ordinance requires a use permit that, if granted, will allow the development of a subdivision under existing AG1 standards. If a use permit is required, it's not optional. No one knows where we'll end tonight on the issue of density neutral ordinance. If an amendment is added to include bonus lots, the ordinance will certainly not be density neutral. I'm concerned then that the CSO will be used by developers only on land where a conservation subdivision will yield more homes than can be developed on traditional AG1 standards. Getting more lots is the only incentive the developer has to follow the more expensive CSO design and permitting process. If the CSO is used as a means to develop less developer-friendly land, we have created a tool that will accelerate the rate of development in Milton. Fulton County requires 1-acre home sites and does not permit the type of community septic systems required for a conservation subdivision. We will require Georgia EPD permits. At 10,000-gallon systems, 34 houses are required to generate the capacity needs for an EPD permit. We will not have local ability to regulate the permits issued by the Georgia EPD. Before you vote tonight, please ask yourself if you're confident that we have a well-drafted ordinance that accomplishes its stated purpose.
Thank you. Sudi?
Next speaker is Scott Sawyer, and after that is Daniel Ben David.
I think Mr. Sawyer, there must have been 2 cards in there or something. Am I correct? Yeah. So who's the next speaker, Sudi?
Daniel Ben David.
And then who's after that?
Pamela Jackson.
Good evening. My name is Daniel Ben David. I reside at 85 Arabian Avenue in Milton. And I am opposed to the CSO as it currently stands. I think the Planning Commission has 3 times recommended not to pass it, and I don't see why there should be a 4th time. I think there was some deception on the part of the way it was presented originally, because I liked the idea when I first heard it. And then when I started looking at the details, I realized that this was going to be more problems and more cost and more congestion and more density and more traffic, and infrastructure is not capable of holding this process as it is standing now. I urge you to examine it closely and follow the recommendation of the Planning Commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Sudie, could call the next.
Next is Pamela Jackson, and after that is Matthew Mitchell.
Hello, I'm Pamela Jackson, and I live at 2105 Bethany Way. I also own acreage all the way down Hopewell Road, and I own acreage on Haygood Road. I am absolutely opposed to this. I think the gentleman that said it is a disaster said it very, very well. I was born on a farm down on Claremont Road. Well, I was born in a hospital, but I was a child on a farm down on Claremont Road. And across the street was Old Sam's Farm, which I know most of you know Old Sam's Farm. We used to play over there. We used to ride over there. It's now called Century Plaza. And on my family farm down there is a hotel. What I'd like to just say is that this is just the density that this is going to create is another situation that, just like that. We moved out here in 1969 in order to get away from that and live on a farm again. I live on a farm. I have roughly 20 acres there at the corner of Hopewell and Bethany Way, where the traffic is absolutely horrible. And there is no way that if I sold that property right there, we could fit maybe 100 more homes right there and have that many more people coming in. So what I would ask is, please don't do this. This is not good for our community. It's not what we want. I am one of the horse farms. I want to keep my horse farm. I want to stay here, and I want for Milton to remain the way that it is and not to have it changed into something that the people don't want. And please, we don't want this. So please vote no. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Matthew Mitchell, and after that is Kim Horn.
Hello again, I'm Matthew Mitchell. I live at 1750 Providence Farms Lane. And again, I feel like it's Groundhog Day. We've been through this a lot. But I'll be brief. I sent an email this afternoon. I apologize that it was late. I know there was plenty of time to get to it. But I'll read part of that email. And just note that I did include 4 pages of comments. I think that 4 pages tells that there's a lot to do with this ordinance. So in summary, I again appreciate your effort. I understand the pressure to do something, but you must not allow that pressure to force the adoption of a fatally flawed ordinance. At this point, I'm hopeful that you will unanimously vote down this ordinance because if passed, it will ensure the destruction of everything it is supposed to protect. Through my experience as an architect, I have worked with countless ordinances, and I know how developers evade their intent by adherence to the letter of the ordinance. This ordinance provides woefully inadequate conservation measures and provides countless paths around its intent. If this ordinance is adopted, Milton will assuredly become nothing more than another homogenized North Atlanta suburb. The property values that have been such a concern will undoubtedly decline as what is driving them higher is eliminated. In addition, this ordinance will force an increase in the size and cost of government through increased government involvement, community septic system failures, strained infrastructure, and increased litigation. The natural result will be pressure to increase property taxes even as values decline. This is the legacy we face: a deteriorated community, a lost quality of life, lower property values, larger government, and higher taxes. Please review the attached comments. The first and most important test of every piece of this ordinance should be, does it conserve Milton's rural character? I ask that you prudently, consciously, and earnestly consider these comments, the voice of your community, and the recommendations of your Planning Commission, above any preconceived ideas or agendas. Your vote on this has tremendous consequences. It will determine the future of Milton more so than any other vote to date. I believe you all want to preserve Milton, but I also believe that anyone who is in favor of this ordinance does not fully grasp its deficiencies. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Kim Horn, and after that is Charlie Huffman.
Good evening. My name is Kim Horn. I live at 415 Way Glen Court in Milton, and I'm not going to repeat what everybody else has said, but I strongly oppose the CSO ordinance as written and would hope that tonight you would follow suit from what the Planning Commission has told 3 times and all the citizens, or many of the citizens, have said, and please deny the ordinance. Thank you.
Next speaker is...
Sudi, can I hold on 1 second? Where are we? Are we approaching the 1 hour mark?
7 minutes.
About 7 minutes. How many more speakers do we have?
About 12 more and a couple to read in the record.
Okay. Let's let's move forward for the next 7 minutes, and we may have to make a call.
Okay, next speaker is Charlie Hoffman, and after that is Stephanie Jack.
Hi, I'm Charlie Hoffman, and I live at 915 Providence Ridge. I've lived in Milton for 3 years now, and I moved out of my old area because it was extremely busy, and right outside of my neighborhood was a 6-lane road. We do not want that here. We live in a very rural area, and we all think that is very nice. Most of us live on 1 acre. If we vote for this, there will be 4 houses on the size of our yard. Why do we want 4 houses on our yard? We would also have to put in a sewer system. If we put in a sewer system, they would have to dig up everything, everywhere. We all live here because we like the way we live. Let's not change that. Please vote no on the CSO. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie, for getting up and speaking. Not the position, but just the fact that commend you for getting involved and getting up and speaking in front of everybody.
Next speaker is Stephanie Jack, and after that is Julie Zonner-Bailey.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Jack, and I live at 520 Laurel Oaks Lane. I've lived there for 15 years, and quite honestly, I don't think I need to say anything more than what Charlie just said. Please do not vote for this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Julie Zonner-Bailey, and after that is Bill Bailey.
Good evening. My name is Julie Zonner-Bailey, and I live at 255 Hickory Flat Road. The CSO is a guise for higher density housing, period. While everyone's intentions may have been pure when the study into a CSO began, the reality now is that the CSO would introduce private sewer. It does increase density to the tune of a 1/4 acre lot, and it does allow for density that was never intended for rural Milton. Please focus on how to improve the AG standards versus allowing for more density and the introduction of private sewage. While some of you might want to take issue with the phrase private sewer, it is indeed private sewer. Large package community septic systems are analogous with sewer because they allow for density that otherwise would never be allowed on any parcel internal to Milton. It allows for higher density, and it effectively brings sewer to the community just through private operators. And whether the CSO document reflects a 1/4 acre, a 1/3 of an acre, or a 1/2 acre lot, it's higher density than what citizens want and than what's allowable today. Specific concerns. Public input process is not adequate. The document's purpose and intent talks about trying to create the perception of lower density. No, we don't need the perception of lower density. We need lower density. Density neutrality. It's critical to the issue that's before you. This is not density neutral. It never has been, and it can't be unless you require the same requirements in an as-is build comparison with what would be required under AG1 today versus what it would not. The reason that Lakapani and others would love to have this is that under current build standards, you couldn't get the density that they're talking about getting. That's the fact. It's the truth. I understand the ordinance. You guys know I understand the ordinance, and it should be denied. This ordinance, additionally, in terms of green space, it doesn't define green space as green space. It allows structures. It allows buildings. It allows the community septic system. It allows structures that have nothing to do with green space. It's not green space. Buffers, they're inadequate. You know it. We know it. The citizens should not have to, those of us that live here that conserve our own land, shouldn't have to have quarter acre, third of an acre, half an acre lots at my back property line. It's unconscionable, and I can't believe we're even talking about it. Wastewater treatment systems, you guys all said we wouldn't allow it to happen. It shouldn't. Please deny this ordinance. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people ask you to deny it. Thank you.
City, if you'd call the next.
Next speaker is Bill Bailey, and after that is David Ellis.
Bill Bailey, 255 Hickory Flat Road, Milton, Georgia, 30004. I just love following my wife. She talks so much slower than I do. These are copies from the EPA website. Shows the Birmingham community septic system in non-compliance for the last 6 months. I shop there every day on my way home. The place just reeks. No one is providing any insight or oversight, if you will, on what's going on there. Every night they turn on the pumps for their community septic system. You can smell it. In the parking lot, it's not very nice. No one actually wants to live in a subdivision if they're going to smell something like this on a daily basis with the houses surrounding them. And as far as the drain fields, leach fields for that, there's multiple acres behind Publix. If you put it on a conservation subdivision, you're going to need twice the linear footage for your septic system as you would on a house. You're going to have to tear up the land to put in the drain fields, roughly 360 feet per 5-bedroom house, plus double that for a reserve. If you put all your houses on half the land, did I go out? No. On half the land, you're going to have to tear up the land to put in the drain field, what you're calling green space. I don't think that's what you intend. If you want to preserve something, you're going to have to bulldoze the trees to put in that large a system, and then you're going to have to smell it every day. I don't think we want to smell that every day, and nobody wants to live like that. There's only been 2 people that are large property owners like my wife and I that have come up here and said, please do this. There's just under 400 large parcel owners in the city of Milton. You haven't heard very many people come up and say, please do this to my property. Please do not do this to my property. Thank you.
Sue, if you'll call the next speakers.
Next speaker is David Ellis, and after that is Tom Meredith.
Mr. Mayor, City Council members, my name is David Ellis. I'm with the Greater Atlanta Home Builders Association, and I come tonight in support of the Conservation Subdivision Ordinance. I think...
Excuse me, folks. If you could keep it in the audience down. Go ahead.
As we've seen around the country, many progressive communities have adopted ordinances like this to protect open space and vital environmental things in areas where development's allowed. But it creates options and it creates opportunities for communities. And we think it's a good thing for that reason. But I'm going to go back to the options thing, and one of the things that Mr. Touchton raised earlier from the Council for Quality Growth related to this, having this as an option for development and not a mandatory requirement, because there's some confusion in there. I think in the rule it says, or in the ordinance it says, shall be preferred. It's pretty vague and hard to get your head around what that exactly means, and really defining this as an option when it's appropriate. Also, if it is mandatory, it really raises a lot of questions. The city's permanently removing the development rights from the property. The forced permanent dedication of 50% of a residential subdivision found in 50-39A violates the substantive due process provisions of the U.S. and Georgia constitutions and taking provisions of the Fifth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, something that we're really concerned about. So again, that optional basis makes a lot more sense. Also, the 0.25 minimum acre lot size requirement imposed in 50-45A may be economically unfeasible in some instances and has no relationship to the protection of health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of Milton. As such, it's also arbitrary and under the due process provisions as well as the taking provisions of the U.S. Constitution. Those are some concerns, and I know Mr. Touchton talked about that, and that's been a part of the discussion here today. But again, we do encourage you to take a good look at this. A CSO can be a very positive thing for communities. It gives really quality, economically, environmentally sensitive developers like Brightwater Homes, who spoke earlier, gives them options when they look at developing land and doing the right thing. Again, as we recently know in the recent discussion we had about impact fees, open space is very expensive to the public in our communities, and creating that open space within the private communities is a big help to those private citizens.
Excuse me. Could the audience please be quiet?
Mayor, we've reached the hour, probably an hour and a minute.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Could we, for the record, sir, could you, David?
He said it.
He did? Okay. Okay, well, do we have the name and address for the record, Mr. Ellis? Okay, do you mind just speaking into the
Sure. No,
microphone?
I live at 3795 Hedgecliff Court in John Creek, Georgia.
Thank you. Okay, all right. Okay, if you guys remember, we asked everybody to be cordial. So do you feel, all right, so we're at
we've
the
reached
hour
the hour.
point.
Yes, sir.
And how many speaker
We've
cards
got
do we have?
5 cards of individuals that would like to speak, and then 5 cards that do not want to speak but want their name and position read in the record.
Okay, 5 cards at 2 minutes is 10 minutes. Would the council be willing to give 10 more minutes for folks? Okay. Yes, sir.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for all your hard work. My name's Tom Meredith, and my wife and I have been in the Roswell, Milton area for 22 years, and we've recently purchased a home on 5 acres, and we're building a retirement home. Specifically, we came here to have our horses be on a horse farm. So we like the horse idea. And we live on 735 Ebenezer Road is where we're building, and there is some land back there that we knew would be developed at some point in the future. And we didn't think it would happen this quickly, and we basically have been speaking to developer Charles Boswick, who made a presentation earlier today, and he's shown me 2 plans. One plan is with the new zoning, the CSO, which does a really good job of preserving space, putting horse pastures out, and conserving a lot of land. And the other plan, where you're basically, and I'm willing to give these to the council, where it's 1 acre lots, and every spare inch has to be maximized for 1 acre lots, as is the way things are built. And quite frankly, I'm going to be surrounded by this development one way or the other. And I would much prefer this CSO sanction plan, all things being equal. And that's the one thing I don't know enough about. I don't know the specifics enough, so I'm simply saying from the 2 plans I've seen and the analysis I've done on a very, very specific plot of land, I would much prefer the CSO plan versus the 1 acre plan, simply because it does maximize the land. It'll look much nicer than this. Plus, there's going to be places for myself and to walk around. It looks like a better thing to do as a concerned homeowner. And new to Milton, came here specifically to have horses. My wife has 2 aging horses, and we want to basically see them off into the horse sunset. But that's my story, and I thank you for all your time.
Thank you.
Next speaker is David Shannon, and after that is Don Broussard.
Mayor, council members, my name is David Shannon. I live at 2225 Birmingham Road. Lived in the community for over 25 years. I think everybody's intention is in the right direction to conserve, but I can give you my experience, which is unique. We bought property next door to us to expand the farm. It was going to be a subdivision. It only perked for 7 lots out of 38 acres. That's the land around here. It just rolls. I also had a little experience back in 2009, in September 2009, the Great Flood of Atlanta. The Manors wastewater treatment facility failed, overflowed, came into the tributaries, into Chicken Creek, and it was devastating. There was we're talking about the same thing right now. We were talking about in 97, I believe, or 98, when the manor was being proposed. And I think coming in here with homeowner HOA septic systems is just not a good idea. I think larger lots is the answer if you want to conserve this area. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sudie, if you'd call the next speaker.
Next speaker is Don Broussard, and after that is Sharon Mays.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Don Broussard, 1786 Alderbrook Road, Atlanta, Georgia, 30345. I'm the principal and owner of Town Planning and Design, as you know. I wanted to appear tonight to make a couple of brief comments. wanted to clear up a misstatement that's been perpetuated starting at the Planning Commission meeting on October 28th, that a very irresponsible statement was made by one of the members that I had a conflict of interest. And I want to make sure that on the record I can tell you all that I have no conflict of interest. I've never worked for anyone else in the city of Milton during my assignment with you all. I have not had any promises of work or promises of compensation. My job as a planning consultant, as a responsible ethical professional, is to give you all my best independent professional advice, and that's what I have done. So it'd be nice to get a retraction from the planning commissioner in question, but I'm not going to hold my breath that I get one. Let me say a couple of things about the ordinance. The draft you all are considering is a good ordinance, and I support and want to commend you all, commend this council for sticking with this mission that you all have taken on at the direction of your citizenry. And it's clear to me that those values that are in your comprehensive plan really mandate and require you all to do something in this direction. Conservation subdivisions have a proven track record. They've been endorsed by the State Department of Community Affairs. They're endorsed by the University of Georgia's Land Use Law Clinic. They are built all over New England. They are built all over Virginia, North Carolina, all over the state of Colorado. They have been endorsed essentially by the Wall Street Journal. Let me encourage you all to adopt a good ordinance and make that equestrian symbol something other than merely a hollow symbol. And conservation design is your best tool to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Broussard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, Judy, if you'd call the next one or two folks.
The last two speakers, Sharon Mays, and after Sharon is Barry D-U-I-S-E. Duis?
Is Miss Mays here? Okay. She may not be here. Then
Barry Duis.
is Mr. Diaz here? Okay. All right. Yeah.
So I have 5 to read into the record. First, we have John.
Let me clarify something too. You read these in the. These are folks that came here and filled out a card, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they did.
No, a different person. You say a different person that's on the card.
No, I probably checked the wrong box.
Oh, sure, absolutely, absolutely. If it's your name on the card.
My name is Matt Vinson. I live at 105 Whippoorwill Court. That's in Eatonton, Georgia, down on Lake Sinclair. I've been involved with this. I support the ordinance. I've been involved trying to differentiate community wastewater systems as opposed to septic systems. I've taken some notes here tonight. I'm kind of here to rebut non-facts, to give facts where I can and where I can apply those. I was a health inspector. I've written septic permits. I've inspected septic installations. I'm a licensed septic contractor. I've worked for the largest wastewater product manufacturer in the country over time. I am a Class 3 wastewater operator. I operate the wastewater system at Serenbe. If anybody would like to come see it, see how it smells, see how it looks, see how it runs, you're welcome to do so. It doesn't stink, it doesn't pollute, it doesn't add nitrogen to the ground. We've had a comment tonight about nitrates being added to the ground. Septic systems add nitrates to the ground. There's nothing in a septic system that treats nitrogen. It puts it out there, and dilution is the solution to pollution when it comes to nitrogen with the septic system. Community wastewater systems actually denitrify. They have groundwater monitoring wells that make sure they denitrify. So you have to test the groundwater under your drain field to make sure you're not adding nitrates to the groundwater supply. I also do represent septic systems. I am, as of 4 months ago, I just recently stepped down as the president of the Georgia On-Site Wastewater Association. That is a septic tank business. So I'm unbiased in where I give you information on septic versus community wastewater.
Easy, folks.
Perk rate has been mentioned 5 times in here tonight that I can call. None of you guys have the ability to change the perk
requirements. EPD and Georgia Department of Public Health set those, and you don't have the ability to change them. So there's nothing that's going to change about permitting of individual septic versus community septic. We're running out of time. There are 94,000 septic repair permits written from 2002 up until 2014. That's 94,000 failed systems that the Department of Public Health knew about and permitted. So they fail as well. I'm out of time. Thank you.
Thank you. Judy, did you have anybody else to read into the?
That's all for speaker, just names to read into the record.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So we'll close public comment. Okay. At this point, just a clarification, Ken, with your help, just moving forward, we have a couple of options. The existing ordinance that's before us, and I do want to say something. No matter which position you have, and I'm not stating a position, I'm just I think there is some miscommunication. I fully believe, whether you support or oppose, the intent of the CSO was not to increase density. So, when folks are repeating that, I think that, there could be a possibility of it possibly doing that, but it's, I think the folks that have supported it are not, that's not the intention, and I don't believe at all that this is developer driven and whatnot. So, again, just to kind of clarify that. But Ken, we can adopt this ordinance. We could deny this ordinance if there's support on the council that wanted to try to change this ordinance. But I know that's a fine line there. So could you explain that?
Right. So the council has placed on an agenda, has published by way of your website and the other ways that the city of Milton publishes the information in front of it. And so the folks are here commenting on what they have seen online and commenting about based upon the information the council's provided. As we get into this, if there are in fact modifications to it, particularly ones that I believe, perhaps in conjunction with the city manager, begin to substantively change it more than just perhaps maybe some modest revisions, such that I believe that adequate notice requires that we have another public hearing, I will let you know. Candidly, that's going to depend upon where the debate goes, and I don't know. I think, Mr. Mayor, it would be appropriate to start with what was published as at least our ground level of where we want to go, and then let the council. For instance, if the council wanted to make a motion to deny, the council could make a motion to deny. If the council wants to make a motion to approve, the council could do that. Or if the council wants to take this document and to begin to go line by line through it and to make changes, we could do that as well. But at some point, if that occurs, I may respectfully recommend that we have an additional public hearing and allow the public to have one more opportunity to comment.
And can you just give, it may be hard to do, but you don't know it until you see it, but examples of, to what level you could make changes or to where you're going too far?
I'll provide an example if you want.
Sure, yeah, go ahead.
So, Ken, in the language that opens up the ordinance, there is the discussion about having it as the preferred method. And I forget the exact language, but basically what it states is that if you're developing a subdivision, you have to follow the CSO, the Conservation Subdivision Guidelines. If you don't want to do that, you have to ask for a permit to do the other.
Right.
Now, I think that is a problematic component of this. It's probably one of the few structure elements that I think has problems. And one of the things that I know people have talked about is the reversal of that, so that this is, you have to get a permit if you were going to develop as a conservation subdivision, as opposed to not needing a permit to do that.
Right.
I think that would be one of the changes that we talked about. But would that be too far out of line?
No, and the reason that I'm not going to have a concern with that is because I believe you are making a regulation less rigorous. You're making it absolutely optional at that point, if you understand my point, because if you take away the permit, then you have truly made it optional. I would be looking, what you can count on me to do is look at where it goes the other way, where it may become more restrictive or onerous on property owners.
Okay.
That's where because that's when you start getting into due process considerations.
Okay, so I appreciate that. And, so really, I guess before I want to kind of open up, let the council discuss and speak, but is there, just kind of point blank, we've got a couple of options here, and everybody's got some different ideas and things on it. Heard a lot from the public. Is there, I'm just going to ask the council, is there support from the council, or is there the desire by enough council members to look further into this ordinance that's here to discuss it? Or, if there's not, then, we might just open up for a motion rather than spend 4 hours. But we're certainly glad to be here for as long as we can. But I just want to, is there support from the council that wants to dig into this and look at it, or just make another action? So I guess, Karen, you had your hand up first, then Joe.
As I have stated in discussions with several of you and in emails, I don't support the ordinance that is currently written. I believe that it ought to be a use permit that is required rather than a ordinance that gives a person the right per se to it. A use permit that would, with additional restrictions, including making sure that it is density neutral, making sure the community septic is properly addressed, making sure the proper land that we want preserved is preserved, and all of that would be a use permit, which I believe if we go to a use permit rather than the ordinance as it currently is, it would probably something that would need to go back to staff and also come back for another hearing.
Right. That is a fundamental different sort of structure, Councilmember Thurman. That's not simply making this optional. That is reconfiguring the totality of the code, at least the way I just heard what you said.
Sure. All right. Joe.
Well, first of all, I agree with Councilmember Thurman's comments about that, and I would start by saying that regardless of some of the comments that have been made tonight, the underlying principle of what we were trying to do with the CSO is a good thing. The idea of conserving open space in a meaningful way is certainly a good thing. The idea of doing this in a manner that maintains the current density standards that we, we're going to do I think that's a good thing. Supporting the comprehensive land use plan that's about to undergo its first 5-year update, I think that's a good thing. Finding ways to do all of that without negatively impacting the property or home values, I think, is a good thing. The way this ordinance proposal is written today absolutely provides the Planning Commission review and the council approval for all of the things. So the 4-step process that we have in place is integral to this. So I would say, with just a couple of things, the structure of the proposal itself is sound. We just messed up on some of the details. And some of those details would include the size of the development, the minimum lot size, the optional nature of the proposal, as opposed to being a requirement or getting a special use permit, as Karen suggested. And then finally, the most important part is communicating the fact that the proposal is intended to be a density neutral plan. Now, we don't have to start arguing over what density neutral means or anything like that. And we can fix a lot of what I would call the variables in the subdivision proposal, but that might not be enough. And our biggest challenge is that we've got a lot of questions from well-meaning citizens. I think that both sides made good points tonight, and I just think that from the get-go, even though we've been talking about this for some time, we've got some flaws in the way this all came together, and I don't think anybody, certainly I can't speak for anybody on the council, but I think that a lot of folks would agree that we ran into quite a few bumps in the road in trying to pull all this stuff together. And that's the thing that we can't fix. Well, we can't distance ourselves, or we can't fix the appearance of some of the problems that we've had. And even though they may not be well-founded, it's there. It's a challenge. Now, let me tell you, I've been in the IT business for a long, long time, and there's been plenty of projects where I woke up in the morning, looked out, and said, you know what, we've been working on this really, really hard for a long, long time. I can see where we want to go. I think that's the right place to be, but I can't get there from where I am. And it usually means that you have to reboot, you have to go back, you have to question some of the fundamentals of the project or the thing that you were working on in order to build yourself back to a place where you can reach your goal. Now, I could go on, we could get long-winded, we could do a lot of things, and I wanted to put this on the front end of the discussion so that we could get it decided right away. But I'm going to move that we deny the CSO proposal as written, and I do that with the idea that we can take the knowledge, the good pieces of what we've learned through this entire process and address this subject again at some point in time in the future, potentially with the work that we're going to do in revamping the AG1 standard. So I'd like to move that we deny the CSO proposal as written.
You know, all due respect, I'd like to, is there anybody else, council, would like to say anything before we've got a motion? I mean, obviously, you can speak after
well, we don't have to do anything
you
if
can
we
discuss,
don't get a
but
second.
Yeah, do it.
Mr. Mayor, it would be appropriate to see if you have a second for that motion.
All right. Councilmember Longoria has made a motion to deny this CSO ordinance. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second. Now I'll open up for discussion.
I guess I'll go.
Okay. Go ahead, Matt.
And just for the, on the record on this, my experience in being the northernmost elected official in all of Milton, who walks up and down Mountain Road every Sunday, and I see what's going on with the changes that are up there. I write this and want this all to be in the record for exactly what I see is going on. So when I ran for city council 4 years ago, I made a promise to protect our rural heritage in the city of Milton. Specifically, I mentioned the equestrian community and preserving horse pastures. When I talk with people within and outside the city of Milton, everybody says how beautiful the community is. And it's because of those horse pastures. It's not because of the subdivisions. Thus, I believe I do everything within my efforts to preserve the large tract of land. As an elected official, I feel it's my responsibility to do everything I said I would do. God forbid our elected officials to try to do what they said they would do. And fighting for that which is best within our community definitely fits within that parameter. That being said, and I have firsthand experience, current AG1 zoning does not preserve our equestrian pastures. If someone could name an AG1 community that has been built within the last 5 years that has preserved an equestrian pasture, I'd be apt to listen to them. But you cannot do that because none exists. And that's the reality that we are facing, is an economic challenge that is happening to us. The true reason our rural heritage is at risk is due to our current zoning laws, and they do need to change. Fortunately, I think people within our community are waking up to the reality that AG1 isn't getting the job done. Whereas current AG1 zoning is guaranteed to remove equestrian pastures. It is guaranteed to remove them because they do not exist as they're being built. What we were trying to do with this option is create something that actually gives them a chance to remain. Gives them the chance to remain. And there is an economic auction, I believe, that gives our rural heritage that chance. And that is the conservation design within the Conservation Subdivision Ordinance. It's an option which other communities in states around us and within the state of Georgia have found to be successful, which increases property values and preserving a balance between the people of nature by controlling density. It drives me nuts when someone says that we're not smart enough to get it done, but someone else that I look at has done it elsewhere. And that's the problem I see as we sit here. We don't believe and have faith in ourselves. I worry about that. Because the reality of economics is our equestrian pasture is disappearing. It is happening to us. I know that specifically because my neighbors and I looked at an equestrian pasture next to our house. Looked at it for 10 years. It's gone. It is a cul-de-sac today. Any one of you are welcome to drive back and look in the back of my backyard. You can really see my neighbor's backyard too. It's not that I'm doing anything that will protect me, but I made a promise to protect those types of properties, and that was one that disappeared. And the current zoning created that condition. I'm not mad about that, but I know that the reality is that if we are going to create a desire for what we are as being rural, we need to decide exactly what rural is. Is it equestrian pastures or is it not? Is it subdivisions as we drive down the road? That is something that we as a community have to decide. And I see for myself that I made a promise that I'm keeping, that I wanted to try to do what I could there to do that. This final ordinance, I agree with Joe and I agree with Karen. There's details in this that I think that need to be hashed out. Density is the primary issue everybody talks about, and I think there needs to be clarity as to exactly what that density will be. I think as a culture, as a community, we can figure out an answer to that. We can decide what that is. We can be the best that we can be to figure out solutions and let us direct development rather than let development direct us. But that's going to take all of us working together on this issue. There are those that have blogs out there against us, and I never thought I was such a bad person until I read one. Give it to the priest. The reality is, I believe in everybody here. I believe in all of you, every one of us. And I see something happening to us, and it drives me nuts because I watch it. Kind of like maybe, something happening where we can't change it, and we watch someone we love suffer. That's just the way I feel. That's just my perspective. So, it's been a long process. We're all tired. We're all tired. And I commend every single one of you for being here as a part of the process. I've met with proponents and opponents. I've had people that have written about us and said things, and I've given everybody the right to say whatever they want to say. What I do know that for this council and for myself, we're trying to find solutions. Something that brings us together. Something that answers what happens with AG1. Every one of you is special in this community, and each of you is our best asset. Every one of you. So, my statement here is really one of something where I'm proud of every single one of you for what you stand for, and what you know and what you don't know, and your perspective, and the fact that you're sitting next to each other, stating that you believe in something. And we believe in something too. We're just trying to figure out exactly what that means. So I hope that we can come up with a solution that looks at the reality of the change that's occurring in the northern end of the city. It is 3,000 acres, which is 12% of the 25,000 acres that we have. 12%. If there is a density bonus of 10%, the reality is it's not a 10% increase in traffic, it's a 1.2%. If you want to do the math, I'll give it to you. But my point is that we got to decide what the price to pay is to preserve equestrian landscape, if that's what we want to do. And I want to hear from those that oppose the CSO a solution to do that. It's great to say you're against something. Tell me what you're for. I want to know that. So I'm fighting for equestrian landscapes. And you may love me or hate me for it. But I made a promise, and I've always decided to keep that promise. And I commend you all for where your stance is, but for this council, I know we'll figure out a solution. Thank you for your time on that and for the chance to say this. It's been a difficult issue for a lot of us.
Okay.
Well, how do you follow a presentation like that? I think I reflect the same passion that Matt has. reflect the passion that those who are in favor and those who are against that. And I've been, in the last week or so, I've been going back through our comprehensive plan that was adopted back in 2011. And that was a result of 3 years of work. And several members of that CPAC are here tonight. Marty Locke, who spoke, Ms. Kim Horn, who spoke, Paul Moore, who was on the commission at that time and still is. I think I saw Fred Edwards here someplace. You can't hide, Fred. Curtis Mills, several others, other names that you might recognize. And at that time, of course, most of the city council was here. Bert, the mayor, Karen, and Mrs. Bailey was here at the same time. And after 3 years worth of work, we adopted this document. This is a guiding document that directs us in practically everything we do here in the city. I had planned on going through and reading you excerpts from this, but it's a lengthy document. It's about 80 pages long. But at least in a dozen places in this document, it mentions the adoption of conservation subdivisions. This document was overwhelmingly approved by the Planning Commission, CPAC, and City Council at that time. The basic concepts of that conservation subdivision ordinance haven't changed. What we have seen here, I think, in the last 6, 7, 8 months since we've been seriously discussing this issue is the details. And like they say, the devil's in the details. I think there are some major issues involved with the ordinance, the way it's written. And I think I hear that as a common thread tonight. I'm not sure if given the proper information and education out here, those who are totally opposed to it wouldn't come around and see the virtues of it. But I still hear that same common thread that we oppose it as it is written. So given that commentary and the issues brought up by Councilman Longoria and Councilperson Thurman here, I do think there's a lot more work to be done on it. I think the educational process needs to be increased. I think there's a lot of misinformation, a lot of untruths that surround this whole discussion. And I think as educated, intelligent people out here, we can find some common ground and consensus on this. I believe conservation subdivision is good for the city. There's only a limited amount of open space left, folks. And like other people have said here tonight, once it's gone, it's gone. No turning back. We're not going to get into a redevelopment phase 5 years down the road. We've got to do it right the first time. You only have one opportunity to do it right the first time. I would propose that we dig into this issue further. I think there were some legal issues brought up by Mr. Ellis. I'm concerned about the use permit issue brought up by Ms. Thurman. And I'm not sure we could wade through those issues tonight and really come up with something that's viable and acceptable and workable here in the city.
I think one of the challenges we've had with this is we've had a version that was designed basically back in July and August. And I think you've heard almost everybody here say that as written, would we adopt this verbatim? I think the answer, I can't speak for everyone up here, but I think the answer is people would probably not say, let's take it and just as written and we'll pass it. And I guess to reflect some other comments, nobody on council is sitting up here saying we want to ruin Milton. We live here. I think the commitment is we want to see what we can do. There is concern with some of the clear cutting and some of the development that we've seen, not in the subdivisions that were developed 20 years ago, 15 years ago. It's the more recent development. We see property go away. And many of you have called and said, hey, what's going on with the subdivision? Well, under the current process, we don't even get a notice saying that if it's AG1, we don't get a notice that it's even going to be done. And that's part of when you look at one of the good things within the CSO that we've kind of fleshed out is it does ask the 4-step process would include more community input, including the neighbors that abut the property or the subdivision that's going to be developed. It actually would include that. And as we all of us have spent a lot of time the last year, but especially in the last few months, trying to wade through, get educated, look through the details. And with density is one of the big things I hear, lot size, adjacent properties, protection from development. How do you do that? And talking, listening from Karen and some other folks, how do we do that tonight with what we've got here? I don't know how we're going to do that. And I think that's what Joe had actually put forward is saying that maybe it's the point where what we have, it's going to be hard to actually make all the changes and move this forward. And I guess that's where I'd say I'd support the direction and the movement that Joe put up. I think we've learned a lot. I think there are some positives that can come out of this. I think we need to still consider some of the things that are here. I will tell you personally, one of the unfortunate things that I've seen, we're a community. Everybody here is neighbors. But I've never seen the amount of vitriol and castigation, even against people that are up here that are trying to serve. And some of the things that have happened, I guess, have been very disappointing to me to see that this is going on because we don't have to try to go through the process. We can have disagreements. I think there's a different way to do it. I don't think we have to. I prefer let's have straight talk. Let's go back and forth. Let's not try to tear people down because you oppose another person. And that's unfortunately what I've seen in a lot of the emails, what I've seen on some of the blog sites, is I've seen a departure from we're discussing a topic. Passion is okay. Passion is great. When you start to tear people down and you start to demonize people, I think we step over the line. And I guess that's probably when I look at this, whether you're for it or against it, I would hope that as we move forward and we look at what's good for Milton and how we go through it, we are trying to get input. We are trying to actually make our city unique, continue to keep the uniqueness. Nobody's setting out to try to destroy the city, even anybody who's for this. So I guess that's my concern is that we haven't had with the current process, with the way we have to, with legislature, we put the ordinance out. We have to consider. We couldn't change it in September and say, well, let's change these 3 things because it's public information. So another thing that I've heard repeatedly is the Planning Commission rejected this 3 times. Why can't you guys figure that out? Well, we're at this point because now we have a chance to actually vote on it. This is the first time we're really actually talking about what are we going to do with this. We've had work sessions. We've had discussions. Nobody has been trying to breathe life into it. We've been trying to actually ferret and go through the details and see, does this make sense? So now we're kind of at that point. But as I've talked to other members on the Planning Commission, my question was, did you reject the CSO because you think there's no merit to any of the things that it's trying to approve? Or did you reject it in its current form as written? And I can tell you what I was told, and I can't speak for every planning commission member, what I was told is, no, we rejected it based upon what we were given and what we had to work with. And we said, no, with this, we don't support this, we think there's some flaws. And then you get into, well, what is it that you would like to see? What do you think is appropriate density? What do you think is appropriate acreage? Do you think there is a workable solution? Then the answer is not, we unanimously vote this down. So I guess where I'm at right now is I'd say, with what we have before us, I'd support the motion. That's where I'm leaning to say, let's basically deny this, and then let's move on. We're talking about what we are going to do with rural subdivision design, other options. I think we've got other things to consider when we look at what are we going to try to do with our community. I do have concerns when I look at some of the development. The question is, what can we do? And I think that's what we're trying to, with you and with us as a council, figure out what's the right direction to go on that.
I think it's important everyone remember that the reason this is even brought up in the very first place was the desire of the community to preserve property and to preserve the rural viewshed and to preserve pastures and preserve some of the forests that we have. And the conservation subdivisions are one way to preserve some of that. And I actually believe strongly in the concept of conservation subdivisions, and they have worked well in some places. This wasn't because some special interest group wanted to get more density. That's not why this was before us. This was before us because we heard from people in the community saying, why are all these subdivisions coming up? Isn't there a way we can preserve the rural viewshed? And that's what we were really trying to do. And I really hate that so much misinformation is out there about, the density and everything else. I believe right now there's no way we can make the changes that we would need in order to have something that personally I could support tonight. I believe there are just too many changes, even though I do strongly believe in the concept. I believe that in order for it to work, there's certain things that we would have to have. I think that we would need to have a minimum of 40 acres rather than 20 acres. And the reason why is because I don't think anyone ought to know a conservation subdivision would exist until you were all the way down into the conservation subdivision. I believe that from the road and from all the adjacent property owners, it ought to appear like it's undeveloped land. And in order to do that, you would have to have a larger parcel than the 20 acres it currently is. I believe that the setbacks ought to be significant. So if somebody chooses to live on a 10-acre parcel, they shouldn't have 10 new neighbors directly adjacent to them. It ought to be that they see a pasture or they see woods. Those houses that would be built in a conservation subdivision would be properly screened so that people didn't have those. I believe it ought to be density neutral. All this stuff about it will increase density, you state these things as a fact. They're not a fact. The fact is we could write it so it is absolutely density neutral. And with the soil analysis that has to be done now, it could be density neutral. So stating that it would increase density is not an accurate statement. If it's properly written, which it is not currently, it could really be something that could preserve property in the city. Unfortunately, I think we've gone too far down the road with the way it currently is. I agree we need to take a step back and maybe as we start off with a new comprehensive land use plan, maybe that group can look at it again and figure out what we can do to really preserve the things that make Milton unique. Because if we don't do those things, every acre could be developed out. And I would hate to see, it all developed out, all the developable land having one house per acre on it, because I think it would ruin what is important to most of us within the city. So please think about what it is. Come up with suggestions. It's a lot easier just to complain about things. Come up with suggestions that we can use to actually try to preserve what we all love about this area, and help us decide, what we need to do within people's property owners' rights to really come up with a solution to continue to have Milton be as unique as it currently is.
The number one issue I have is density, and it's more of an overall density. I don't want to see a single additional house after a CSO than can be allowed today. We did a survey this spring, and I think close to 70% of our residents said traffic was starting to impact their lifestyle. And we can say we're rural all we want, but when you go to every four-way stop in the morning and there's 50 cars at every four-way stop, that's not very rural to me. I'd like to see that based off of perk test as a traditional agricultural subdivision, Ag 1 subdivision, and then base it off that. Tract size, like Karen said, 20 acres is too small in my opinion. It's only an opinion. 40, 50, that's an arbitrary number. I don't know how to defend whatever number. I like 50, but I can't defend that to the guy that's got 49 or 51. But that's another detail. I do like the idea because there are some tracts in Milton, a few, that conservation subdivisions are probably well suited for if it's designed right. So I would like to see the ability for those property owners or developers to be able to put a conservation subdivision there. I like the idea of the use permit for that, not legislating for the masses that's really going to only deal with a few. We have an opportunity for those few that is going to work well to do that. This thing just got off the tracks. The train fell off the tracks. And I think we all still want to go to the same place. We just need to get it back on the tracks again. So I certainly support cleaning the slate and seeing how we can get something going here some other ways.
All right. Thanks. And I guess I'll speak for a minute. Sudie, you can ring the bell at 2 minutes if you want. First I just want to say something real quick about the ordinance. The common thread is, the Planning Commission denied it. It doesn't look like anybody on the council really supports the ordinance as it stood right now. The community was against it, and I remember as a kid in grade school, and we had the line of everybody, and the first person, the teacher told him to explain to the next person how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And I can tell you, by the time I got around, it wasn't not only not a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, it wasn't even a sandwich by the time I got there. And we had a consultant and a lot of folks involved. Our staff put together a lot of things, but you got 7 different people up here. And when everybody gave their input on what was important to them, because I guarantee you, if every one of us wrote an ordinance, it would be somewhat different. It may have a common goal, but by the time you combine them all and work through a matrix on them, it's an ordinance that nobody up here, wanted to support. So it's not necessarily the concept, but it just, that ordinance, it didn't work out just because everybody's involved in it. About 6 months ago or so, and I saw this coming because I think the common thread, and I want to commend, the nice thing is I believe everybody in this room has the same goal and wants the same thing for Milton. I said that early on tonight. It's not, but there's different ways to look at it and different opinions, but I think everybody here wants less density, wants to preserve what we have, and is not looking out, to develop every square inch of land. So we've got to come up with a fair balance on how we do that. But the good news is I think we're all on the same page of what the end result, as you guys have said, either the train's on the tracks or we can't get there from here, but somehow we've got to get there. And I noticed, there was a lot of effort going into the CSO, but, sometimes you got to watch out for not miss the forest for a couple of trees. And while, like I said, 6 months ago, I put together a list of things that the council and the staff and myself had worked on, options to help try to preserve and save things, and put CSO on there. But it was just one of several things. So I think the real important thing is we need to harness everybody that's here tonight, council, everything, to move forward with all the ideas that we have and everything we can do, because the reality is the only way to truly conserve land is to take it off the market. And that's whether we have a bond and the taxpayers help pay for it and the city buys land that permanently is conserved, whether we've got a TDR program, transfer of development rights, which will preserve land in certain areas and horse farms and things like that. Conservation easements. We've got to find some incentives, we're working on incentives that might help somebody that wants to keep their land. But it also goes out to the public, too. I mean, I'm not, I'll use myself as an example. When I moved here to Milton, I bought a bigger lot and a much smaller house. We downsized big time in our house. And, sometimes you got to make that sacrifice. And I'm not saying everybody here can or wants to, but we need to promote that. We need, people need to realize when there's a 10-acre parcel for sale or whatever, talk it up. Get your neighbors or yourself. Get a couple of folks with you. Buy it. Or, talk it up to people that are moving in, because, that's the kind of the ironic thing. And nobody here would say, yeah, we want to, take the bridge away. Don't let anybody else move here. It's a great place to live. But, the reality is most folks are thinking that. Let's not have any more development. And we can't do that, but we can all work together to try to slow it down and make an impact. So the good news out of everything, I think, this ordinance was kind of getting to where we were trying to push a rope uphill, but I think we're all on the same page, and we all just have to work together and moving forward. And like I said, we're all, it seems like, on the same page what we want the end result. So I just thank the council, our staff, I thank everybody that's out here tonight for being a part. And again, I think we all did kind of, we're going to walk away knowing that we're all on the same page, and we can continue to work on all these items. So thank you for your efforts and time. And with that, I'll any more comments?
Yes. We move forward with this motion here. We've talked about opening up or renewing the discussion on the whole issue. I'd like to come up with a schedule of when we're going to do it. I know throughout this process, even in late summer, we talked about having a combined discussion about conservation, about rural design, and the text amendments for the different zoning areas. And that was, I think, that was the goal, that by the end of this year we would have had that whole package together. And the city attorney had promoted that process. The wheels kind of fell off that, in that I think the fact that there was just too much to consider at the time. Planning Commission, I believe, now has the rural design element on their desk. I think this whole thing needs to be brought together in one package. I'm not so sure we can discuss them individually and make them all compatible with one another in the final analysis. But we had, I think, Planning Commission had set a schedule of having reviewed the text amendments by their February meeting. I'm not sure if we can accelerate this whole process again. I kind of have my doubts if we can bring in conservation and the rural design and other modifications to the AG or Chapter 64 within the next 2 months or not. It may be unreasonable. We've spent inordinate amount of time on this whole issue, but I'd hate to see it drag out for another year. One of the members of the Planning Commission, Dr. Carpenter, had suggested in one of his summaries that we have a select committee of interested individuals to go through the conservation and rural design issue and kind of independently come up with solutions or resolution to this whole plan. I'd like to see that committee. Personally, I'd like to see it. I haven't discussed it with anybody else here. I'd like to see a committee like that formed with knowledgeable people in it, people who have the experience in the different fields. Mr. Adams, for example, who has experience in his field, Matt Vinson, or several others. There are many people out here who have, I believe, the proper experience to deal with the issues that are involved in this whole package. But I'd like to see some type of a deadline as a part of this motion, and let's get on with the work of the city.
You know, we've got the motion and a second here. I'm not sure how much we craft in, or even if the motion maker wants, or the second wants to amend a motion, or we can hear this motion and then we can have a motion to how you want to move forward too. So.
Yeah, and I thought about that, and so I don't know. I can't remember, Bill, you specifically mentioned it to me, but I did think about adding some language to include a time frame. But the reality is that I think that wouldn't be a good idea at this point. I think we need to do the work of denying this proposal and then pick up the work of what needs to be done next. So,
okay, so I've got a motion and a second from Councilmember Longoria and Councilmember Hewitt for denial of this item. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimous. Then we need to take a session. You don't come up with a schedule that try to stick something in there.
I don't want to leave this thing open.
Yeah, I don't want to ruin the rules. I slow it up so that, I mean, that's more, or, you know, yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay, where are we? 38.
well, final service delivery strategy agreement between Milton and Milton.
If they take a break, I don't know if I want to walk out there and go to the bathroom.
Not me. I'm going to hold it.
I'm sure I'm going to get one. Whatever I say.
Yeah.
All right, so
Yeah, I got to talk to Jack and some others and tell them, look, I'm not abandoning you. And
No, well, see, the thing is that it doesn't, it's still
Okay.
what you said. For
Hey, Chris, I think next we're on with the CPAC number 4.
Yeah, as soon as it quiets down a little bit, we need to take up the service delivery strategy item, then CPAC.
Okay.
And I've got a couple of updates. I'm going to ask the council to move the staff reports to next week's work session, just because I thought the hours was going to be much later than it is right now. And then we'll do executive session.
Okay. Excuse me, folks. If you guys wouldn't mind, we want to continue on with our business here. So, Sudi, if you would please call our next item.
Our next item is consideration of the final service delivery strategy agreement between the City of Milton, Fulton County, and all other municipalities in Fulton County. Agenda item number 272. This was deferred at October 19th, November 2nd, and November 19th regular City Council meeting. Mr. Ken Gerard.
Folks.
I'm actually going to handle it for the City Attorney tonight. I know it shocks you that this item is not yet ready for presentation to the Council. In that we're waiting on the final document to be delivered to us from Fulton County. So I can tell you that we will be into 2016 to adopt hopefully a document that we should have adopted in 2010, only to be on the heels of having to renegotiate this thing in 2020. So we're going to be good at it by the time we finally get it to you, but my recommendation to the Council tonight would simply be to table this item, and we'll bring it forward once we get it, a final product.
Okay. Do I have a motion and a second?
May I make a motion that we table agenda item number 15-272?
Second.
Okay, a motion from Councilmember Kuntz, second from Councilmember Thurman to table this item. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. All right, Sudi, if you'll please call the next item.
Next item is consideration to appoint the City of Milton Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee Chairperson pursuant to Resolution number 15-11353, Section 5, Agenda item number 15309, Mayor Joe Lockwood.
Okay, going back our last time through this, the chairman of the Planning Commission, Mr. Ragsdale, chaired the CPAC. I I've asked Chairman right now, Peyton, if he would be willing. He said he'd be glad to chair it. I would nominate Peyton just out of process, since that's the way we've done it in the past, unless somebody had somebody else that they had in mind to chair it.
Support that.
So, all right, I'm going to nominate Peyton Jameson to chair CPAC.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by myself and a second from Councilmember Thurman to nominate Peyton Jameson as the chairman of the CPAC. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Okay, let's see. We can do report. You want to move the reports to the
I'd
next
like to
work
move the
session?
published department reports to the work session of next week, just because I thought the hour was going to be too much later. It appears as though Chief Krokop was a little busy at this point, and he would be the one that would lead the report. So if you don't mind, our work session is forming up with only 3 agenda items. We can do these reports at the work session a week from today, and you'll be just as updated. I think you have the data in your packet. So if you're just burning to know what the data is, you have it, but we'll talk about it a week from today.
Okay. Is there anything council wants to report on before we go into executive session?
The Christmas and crab apple was real.
Yeah.
It was a great event.
That was a great event.
Yeah.
Magnum had a great time at his first City of Milton event. So.
Karen, I think that's the first time I've ever seen you with the antlers.
Yeah. Magnum had a great time showing off his Christmas sweater and licking all the kids that were at face level.
And Henry enjoyed Santa. So.
If I could, go ahead, Bill. I do have one quick report to the council.
No, I'd like to remind everybody, this is the date that will live in infamy, Pearl Harbor Day.
Absolutely.
And let us not forget those who lost their lives there and in Pearl Harbor, and those who served in World War II, the hundreds of thousands of people that lost their lives in that conflict, and the millions of people who were incarcerated overseas. It was a dark time in our history, but we prevailed, and I think we ought to give thanks that we had folks out there that stepped forward to protect our country.
I agree. Anybody else? Okay, Chris?
Move on. Now I've got to pull a bill. How do you follow that with an update?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Here I'm about to talk about a pancake breakfast. Just a couple of quick reminders. One is, I think Mr. Mayor would remind all of us that this Friday is when Clark Howard will be at our Walmart doing his Toy for Kid thing.
He called it Alpharetta, though.
Do I, Clark's
No.
kids?
He said it Alpharetta.
Did he? Okay. So we got called out last year for not being there. And so this Friday afternoon is when he's going to be there. So if anybody's...
What are those afternoon hours? Or do you know?
I think it was 2 to 5. I'll email something. 2 to 7?
2 to 7?
2 to 7.
We'll be there that whole time.
At Windward?
At
Yeah.
Woodward, yes.
I think he's varied, because I heard him the other day and he said Milton Walmart, we're going to be there, so.
Just so we don't get called out 2 years in a row. And number 2, a reminder that the pancake breakfast at the firehouse is this Saturday morning, 8 to 10. We anticipate quite a crowd.
That was a big event.
That was big last time, yeah.
Yeah. If last year was the first year, and if it was any indicators to an event that will take off and double and increase in size, this is a key example of it.
And are there like a Toys for Tots donation box in? Wasn't that last year?
With the pancake.
Yeah.
Chief, are we collected for?
Yes, we have boxes out for
Perfect.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Good deal.
All right, thanks. Do I have a motion to move into executive session
So
to
moved.
discuss
Second.
personnel? I have a motion and second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous.
or this evening.
And by the way, thank you for coming and everything. I think then people aren't shocked. They can at least process while we're going, listening.
No, you didn't.
And I want to
said
say
what needed to be said.
I agree.
I think we got a lot of people think.
I just think that. When you and I.
Jerry said I was a lot nicer.
Motion to adjourn.
Well,
Second.
Me too.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Okay, you can shut it off now.
I assume you guys,
You can shut it off now.
Shut it off now.
assume you guys reconvened?
Oh, yes.
Oh, sorry, sorry.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Motion
I did.
You got it?
Point of order.